Sup folks, this is the part 5, of What If Deku was a Quirkless Villain, Chapter 19. Midoriya was in haze and his eyes were now full of an emotion that was unexplainable. It was an emotion that should never surface. It was as if his soul left his body. Chizaki shot tendrils of rock spikes at Midoriya, but to his surprise, he was met with something much more terrifying. Midoriya looked up at Chizaki and threw a simple punch which broke his gauntlet, but the devastation and power he had was devastating. Kinetic strengthened air cannon. Midoriya had been holding back his quirks from emerging ever since the day he received them, but as a result, the power had been stockpiling. As a result, Midoriya was a walking time bomb, and the threat to his mother's life only made him lose any and all control he had on the power. The punch sent Chizaki flying into the air and back to the ground, causing a massive quake and causing the surrounding buildings to collapse underground. Midoriya was sent flying to the ground due to the shockwave, but he landed on his feet. Midoriya was on the ground and turned to face Eri. "Are you okay?" Eri asked, a bit scared of Midoriya's current state. Midoriya's punches were tearing the skin off his arm plus turning his bone to dust, but Eri's Quirk was able to negate all the negative effects. "I'm okay," Midoriya said lifelessly, slowly looking over at his arm. "What the hell was that shockwave?" Rukia asked. Chizaki got up from the ground and walked towards Rukia and combined with him. "An abomination. That is what you are, boy. I can see it in your eyes now. You're an empty husk of a human. If you want to be a monster, so will I," Chizaki said, coughing as he turned to look at Midoriya. "This is bad," Rukia said, watching as Chizaki merged with Rukia, creating a huge disgusting monster. "When I touched Chizaki in my fight, I saw the future. The Vigilante will die and Chizaki will get away and you all won't be able to stop it." Nighteye explained to the group. "Why can't we help?" Rukia asked Nighteye. "The fight they are about to have is beyond us," Nighteye said with a cough. Midoriya soon felt a sudden pain of being ripped apart coming from inside him. "What is this?" Midoriya asked calmly, looking at his body. "She's unable to control her power. By some chance, she was able to activate it, but you don't know how to stop, do you, Eri?" Chizaki explained, shooting more tendrils at Midoriya. Midoriya jumped backward with Eri in his arms and dodged. With her quirk, she can rewind humans. If she wanted, she could revert a human back to a monkey. If you continue to hold her like that, you'll die. There's no way to stop her other than my disassembly. She is cursed. Chizaki explained to Midoriya. "Get on my back," Midoriya said to Eri as he wrapped Mirio's cape so he could hold her. "She has the power to destroy this world built on quirks," Shigaraki shouted as he quickly made his way to Midoriya. "She is not a product for brats like you," Chizaki said angrily, shooting massive spike at Midoriya. "I don't care," Midoriya said, dashing underneath Chizaki and punching him in the gut, sending him flying into the air. "I'll murder your mother in front of you," Chizaki shouted while in midair trying to rattle Midoriya, but was interrupted. Midoriya's eye twitched. Soon he was above Chizaki and punched toward the sky and used the air pressure to slam Chizaki into the ground, creating another crater. "Someone like you doesn't just appear out of nowhere. You're not seeing the bigger picture like me. I'm trying to destroy the world. The very structure that makes it so. Isn't that what you wanted also? Just stay out of the way," Chizaki explained to Midoriya as he quickly made his way towards him. Midoriya was done with Chizaki. He had to end it. I must kill him," Midoriya said in a low voice as he pulled his arm back to throw a punch. Chizaki felt this punch would be different from the others. The amount of force Midoriya was putting into it seemed immense. Midoriya revved up his punch and a whirlwind of air surrounded him almost like a tornado, and the glass from the surrounding buildings shattered by the sheer force of wind his hand was creating. But as a result, Midoriya's arm was being torn apart, but thanks to Eri's quirk the damage was being healed. Boom! The punch was nothing like the world had ever seen. The power was that of a small earthquake. The clouds near them drifted away and Chizaki was grounded by the punch. "My God," Rukia said, looking at Midoriya, who seemed like an empty shell of a human. "It seems I made a miscalculation," Nighteye said with a smile as he grasped his wounds. Chizaki in a last-ditch effort tried to kill Midoriya, but Iri was unstable and soon her quirk hit its peak and was uncontrollable. She ripped Chizaki out of Rukia and Midoriya snapped out of his haze. "What is?" AGH Midoriya said, grunting in pain. "What happened? Is her quirk going crazy?" Midoriya thought as he felt his body being torn apart. Uraraka quickly dashed toward Chizaki, restraining him. "What's the situation?" Rukia asked. Crawling of the underground with Aizawa and many others, the Vigilante suddenly started using his quirk, but now it seems he's in a lot of pain along with the little girl. Uraraka explained to Rukia. Aizawa was regaining consciousness and placed his hand on top of Asui's, who was helping him around. Asui knew what her sensei wanted to do and lifted him up. "I don't know what you did, Midoriya, but you can explain it to me later," Aizawa thought as he stared at Midoriya and Iri and erased Iri's quirk. Midoriya placed Iri down with care and quickly fell to his knees beside her. "Did I?" Midoriya asked himself, looking at his right hand. Midoriya was almost like a passenger when he lost himself in that fight, only allowed to watch but not allowed to control or do anything to stop it. The heroes soon began to make their way to Midoriya and Iri. "I need to run," Midoriya said, trying to catch his breath. Midoriya had broken his gauntlet, so he used what little strength he had left and ran. 5 p.m. Midoriya had stopped on the roof of a building to rest when he heard footsteps approaching. Since he had no weapons, Midoriya had to rely on his fists. "Calm down," Aizawa said as he walked through the door. Midoriya relaxed and laid on the floor. "I'm in pain," Midoriya said, taking off his mask and hood. "I can see that," Aizawa replied, taking a seat. Across from Midoriya there was pause, but Midoriya knew what Aizawa was going to ask. "So? How is everyone? How's the girl?" Midoriya asked, placing his hand on his forehead. "Kirishima has immense bruising and lacerations, but it's nothing life-threatening. Amajima has a large fissure wound on his face, but given time it will go away without a trace. Fatgum suffered numerous bone fractures, but he seems to be doing fine, and as for Rocklock, he was fortunate the blade missed his vitals. Iri on the other hand still hasn't woken up and her fever won't go down. We have her quarantined for now since she can't control her quirk, and letting a quirk like hers go amok would surely cause problems." Aizawa replied, "I see. No one died, that's good." Midoriya replied, still laying on his back. There was another pause. "Mind telling me what that fight with Chizaki was all about?" Aizawa asked, looking over at Midoriya. "How about I tell you when I'm not 2 inches away from wanting to kill myself?" Midoriya replied, turning over onto his side, wanting to take a nap. "I can wait to hear your story, but I need you to come with me now," Aizawa said, struggling to get up. "Don't push yourself too hard, you might throw your back," Midoriya said jokingly, also struggling to get up. "Look who's talking." Aizawa chuckled, helping Midoriya up at the hospital. Midoriya was wearing his costume with the mask and hood on, but the sleeves of his costume were torn to shreds. "So what is it?" Midoriya asked, walking alongside Aizawa. "Nighteye wants to speak with you," Aizawa replied in a solemn tone. Midoriya wasn't dumb, he knew the injuries that Nighteye received were immense. "Shit, don't tell me," Midoriya replied with a tired sigh. Aizawa said, leading the way. "Someone pitched the idea of using Iri's quirk, but since it's so unstable we can't rely on her quirk," Aizawa explained in the elevator. "But what does he want to see me for?" Midoriya asked, stepping out the elevator. "I don't know, but his room is right up here," Aizawa said, leading the way to the door. Aizawa opened the door to reveal All Might, Centipeter, Bubble Girl, and Recovery Girl. Nighteye was just finishing up talking to All Might. "Who is this?" All Might asked with tears in his eyes. "The Vigilante who goes by the name Hope." Nighteye wanted to speak to him. Aizawa explained, "So you're here. The person who shaped the future." Nighteye said, barely able to speak. Midoriya was silent and walked up to Nighteye's bedside. Bubble Girl was crying and sobbing in the back. At that moment Mirko came bursting through the door, followed by a nurse trying to stop him. "Sir Nighteye," Mirko said, tears streaming down his eyes. Midoriya stepped out of the way and let Mirko talk to Nighteye. "No, please don't die, you can't go. You just can't." Mirko shouted with tears in his eyes. Midoriya watched as Mirko cried for his teacher. "I've made you experience so much hardship. If only I had been more astute." Nighteye replied with a smile. "You taught me everything I know. It's because of you that I've gotten stronger. And it's because of you that I'm still here. You have to keep teaching me." Mirko cried out in tears. "Mirko, at first I only took you on because I thought you were a suitable vessel for One for All, but I soon realized even after you received the quirk you held such admiration for me and believed in me, and before I knew it you were my most treasured student." Nighteye thought as tears streamed down his cheek. Midoriya felt a sudden sense of remorse for Mirko. His cries for Nighteye fell onto God's deaf ears, and no matter how much he screamed and begged, Nighteye would die regardless. There was a pause and Nighteye looked over at Midoriya. "Hope, please come over here." Nighteye asked in a weak voice. "I want to know who you are." Nighteye said with a smile, extending his hand. Midoriya was reluctant but soon gave his hand to Nighteye. Nighteye activated his quirk and saw who was behind the mask. Who would have known? Nighteye said, but his smile soon turned to a face of confusion. Nighteye was seeing Midoriya's future, but something was off. "Your future isn't set in stone. I see you in a grave rotting away, but I also see you standing atop a mountain of corpses with blood on your hands. However, I see a savior helping all those around him with kindness and understanding." Nighteye said, looking over at Midoriya. Midoriya was surprised to hear his possible futures being told to him. "I think everything will be just fine though," Nighteye said with a smile. Nighteye signaled Mirko over to him weakly. Nighteye raised his hand and placed it on Mirko's cheek. "Mirko, you are becoming an outstanding hero. So please keep smiling," Nighteye said with a smile, "and you keep an eye on him while I'm gone, alright?" Nighteye said to Midoriya. "I promise." Midoriya replied, "Thank you." Nighteye said, closing his eyes and drifting away. Nighteye passed away with a peaceful smile on his face. Back at the U.A dorms, Midoriya was beyond tired, but he tried his best to get his lesson plan done. Plus, thanks to Eri, he didn't have any visible wounds, so he didn't need to hide anything. There was a ruckus downstairs since Kirishima, Asui, and Uraraka had just arrived. Midoriya wanted to wait it out, but he really wanted something to eat and drink and to have a talk with Aizawa. Midoriya made his way down the stairs, grasping the railing on the stairs to hold him up. The students were all surrounding Uraraka, Asui, and Kirishima when Midoriya reached the bottom. Midoriya made his way to the kitchen while hugging the wall, trying to keep himself from falling. "Midoriya, are you okay?" Mina asked, worried for her teacher. "I'm fine, just hurt my ankle earlier," Midoriya replied. The class all had their eyes on Midoriya now. "I'm glad you three are okay," Midoriya said, looking at the three students. "Yay, we got the boss," Uraraka replied, showing concern for Midoriya. "Ah, that's good," Midoriya said, falling over. The whole class was caught off guard at Midoriya suddenly fainting. Aizawa caught Midoriya in his arms and put Midoriya's arm over his shoulder. "Is he okay?" Mina said, rushing over to Midoriya. "Yeah, he'll be fine. I think he has a bad fever," Aizawa replied. "Don't worry, I'll be fine," Midoriya said to the class. "Are you sure?" Mina asked, getting closer to Midoriya. "I'll be fine, Mina," Midoriya reassured her with a smile. At the infirmary, "God, I feel horrible," Midoriya said to Recovery Girl. "You look horrible and you're burning up." Recovery Girl added, "Recovery Girl, can Midoriya and me have a moment?" Aizawa asked the nurse. "Sure, Eraser," Recovery Girl said with a smile as she stepped out and gave the two some privacy. "So explain to me what happened at the compound," Aizawa asked firmly. Midoriya sighed and explained how he received his quirks by All for One. "That guy, even in jail he's causing problems," Aizawa said, letting out an exasperated sigh. "I even thought about erasing them, but since they were passed on to me I don't have a quirk factor, so there is no way to get rid of them." Midoriya explained angrily, "You lost control back there at the compound too, let's not forget that," Aizawa added. "I'm working on that," Midoriya said, handing Aizawa a USB. "What's this?" Aizawa asked. "It's my work on quirk erasure. I guess the guys who were working made a backup and didn't destroy it." Although this may not be much, it should help. Midoriya explained, laying back. Thank you. Aizawa said, putting away the USB, and I think I should practice what I preach. Until I can get rid of these quirks, I'll make them my own and accept them as a part of me. Midoriya said, looking down at his hands. That's good to hear. Aizawa said with a smile. A few minutes later, Aizawa and Midoriya were making their way back to the rooms when Midoriya spoke up. Hey, when are you training Shinso? Midoriya asked Aizawa. We train on the weekends and sometimes after school in private in Gamma Gym. Aizawa replied, looking forward. I've got some time to stop by, so be ready. Midoriya said with a yawn. About time. Aizawa replied with a yawn of his own. By the way, I need my suit fixed and new gauntlets. Midoriya said in a low voice. Leave the suit in the locked briefcase we gave you in my office. Good night. Aizawa said, walking off to his room, not facing Midoriya and raising his hand in the air to waving goodbye. Midoriya was making his way back to his room when he saw Mina was standing in front of his door. Hello, it's a bit late, isn't it? Midoriya said, walking up to Mina. Yeah, but sleeping is for the weak. Mina said jokingly. Midoriya sensed something was off, and soon Mina's happy expression turned to that of sadness. Midoriya, I just wanted to know if you were okay. Mina said, gripping on the bottom of her shirt. Hey, do you want to know why I became a villain? Midoriya asked, opening the door to his room. Chapter 20. Midoriya and Mina sat across from each other. So how did you become a villain? Mina asked. Let's wind the clocks back a little over a year, Midoriya said, handing Mina a photo of him and his mom together before his big jump. Is this you? Mina asked, staring at the wide-eyed happy boy. Midoriya was nothing like before, mainly his facial expression, hair, and body. It was. I admired heroes and everything about them. Midoriya said, handing another photo of him and his Christmas gift of All Might pajamas when he was a child to Mina. Mina was just even more confused about how he changed so much. I was born quirkless. Back then I thought it was because I was useless and unwanted, but I realized that I was just unlucky. Midoriya said. Mina was silent and let Midoriya continue. I'm sure you've noticed me and Bakugo clearly know each other, Midoriya said. Yeah, it's pretty obvious, but how you know each other is kind of the mystery of the class. Mina replied. Well, once upon a time Bakugo and I were best friends, but when he manifested his quirk and I didn't, we slowly drifted apart, Midoriya explained, thinking back on those times. Unfortunately, I had this false hope that I could become a hero regardless. I only needed a miracle. Well, wide-eyed kids like me with a crazy dream were not welcome in middle school, believe or not. Midoriya explained, showing a hint of sadness in his eyes. I was picked on for being quirkless, and the thought of me still wanting to be a hero made it even worse. Midoriya explained. What, you were bullied? Why would they do that? Mina said, getting angry for Midoriya. The bullying from my classmates never got to me. I still had hope of becoming a hero, Midoriya said. Then what was? Mina asked, somewhat worried. Bakugo was the one who tipped the scale. Ever since he got his quirk, he changed. I'm not sure what happened or what caused him to harbor such hate towards me, but as his quirk got stronger he began to bully me for no real reason, and me being a quirkless child let him get away with it. Midoriya explained with a short smile. Your own friend, Mina said, and sadly as she looked down at a photo of Midoriya. One day he told me something I will never forget. If you want to be a hero so bad, I have an idea to save you. You think you will get a quirk in your next life. Go jump off a roof. Midoriya explained to Mina. Mina froze as she heard that part. Of course I didn't take his words to heart, Midoriya said. Mina sighed and calmed down. After that, I went about my way and ran into the last person I thought I could run into that day. All Might, my idol, my inspiration to become a hero who could save the day and help others with a bright smile. He was my last ray of hope. If I could hear him say I could become a hero even without a quirk. Midoriya explained as he paused. Midoriya? Mina asked softly. Sorry. All Might and I stood at the top of a building after I hitched a ride after he caught the sludge villain. I was nervous, but I asked the question that had burning inside me for years. Can a quirkless boy like me ever become a hero? Midoriya explained as looked up to the ceiling. Mina knew where this was going and she was not ready. That day I gave up on everything. For some reason everything I had been bottling up burst out and the emotion that I felt was indescribable. I cried so much, but in the end, I took Bikugu's advice, and decided to jump off a building and let it all just end. Midoriya explained calmly. Mina was shaken up, she felt anger and she felt sadness. Oh my god, Mina said, looking down at the photo of Midoriya when he was a child with his All Might hoodie, happy as can be, and she burst into silent tears. There was a pause and Midoriya continued, I left a letter for my mom and whatever I had left. Soon I arrived at the same building me and All Might met at, and I jumped. Midoriya explained. But to my surprise, I opened my eyes and I was met with the hero killer stain. He took me back to his hideout and I asked him to train me, to defend myself and become more than just a weak quirkless boy. I became Deku. I used the name given to me by my tormentors to belittle me, so I could turn it into something people would fear. However, at the same time I slowly became this empty husk of a person that you see now. Eventually, Stain and I couldn't work together since we had different ideals, and soon I joined the league not long after. I'm sure you know the rest from there. Midoriya said as he handed Mina some of his tea. There was a pause. I can't believe it. You've been through so much and I can't believe Bikugu did that. Mina said, wiping away her tears. Don't worry about Bikugu. I like to think we have some sort of respectable rivalry now, Midoriya explained to Mina. If you say so. Mina replied, wiping away some tears. Well, why don't you become a hero? Just ask the principal, I'm sure he will let you in. Mina asked with a smile. I don't think so, Mina. I've tried to convince myself that it could be better just being a student here and becoming a hero, but I can't accept it and neither can society. I think after you all graduate from here I'm just going to leave and live elsewhere far from here. Midoriya said with a smile. Mina had forgotten that high school didn't last forever and Midoriya would disappear into the world, leaving memories behind. Why? Mina said with tears in her eyes as she weakly punched Midoriya in the leg. I just don't belong anywhere anymore. Thank you for listening, Mina. Midoriya said. There was silence and only the wind rustling the trees outside could be heard. Mina let out a sad smile and got up. I just wish we could have met that day, Mina said as she headed for the door. We still have a few years left, so don't worry, and even if I do leave I'll always keep an eye for Pinky the hero. Midoriya said with a smile. Yeah. Mina said with a smile. Good night, Midoriya said, opening the door for Mina. Good night, Mina replied with a warm smile as she left. Everyone slept soundly that night. The next day, Midoriya had received his suitcase early that morning from Aizawa with his vigilante costume. Morning, Midoriya said, receiving the suitcase. Turning. Aizawa replied, barely able to speak. Eraser, take this, it's some improvements and notes on the mask, Midoriya explained, handing a folder. Thanks, this will be useful, Aizawa said, taking the folder. We have to tell the students about the cultural festival, Aizawa said, taking his leave. Lazy, Midoriya said, shutting his door and opening his suitcase. The costume was the same, but this time around they had used the fabrics that Midoriya used on his villain costume to withstand his quirk if he ever used it. It also came with new gauntlets and his face mask. Nice to see they made some improvements, Midoriya said, closing the suitcase and putting it away. 1 hour later. Look over here, Mina said as she began to break dance. Midoriya walked into the classroom and was surprised to see Mina in such high spirits. Mina looked over at Midoriya and waved hi with a smile. Midoriya returned with a short wave of his own. The class soon started and the students took their seats. We have a cultural festival, Aizawa announced in his sleeping bag. So school-like, the class shouted. Midoriya had been informed about the festival beforehand and was tasked as security, oddly enough. Aizawa then went on to explain some specifics and the reason for the festival while putting some minds at ease about the timing of the event. Midoriya took the podium afterward. Alright class, you all have to come up for some ideas. I'm going to let your class presidents take the front, Midoriya said as he went back to his chair. Midoriya and Aizawa fell asleep and the class couldn't come up with a theme that day. After school, Midoriya stood outside a gamma gym and made sure to check his surrounding before entering. Aizawa and Shinso were in the middle of a battle. Focus. Aizawa said, wrapping his scarf around Shinso and pinning him down. I'm trying. Shinso said, frustrated. Shinso was covered in bruises, but overall he seemed more battle-ready. Eraser. Midoriya said, walking over to the two. Midoriya, I'm glad you could make it, Aizawa said as he released Shinso. Hello. Shinso said, how is training? Shinso, Midoriya asked, helping the boy up. I don't feel like I'm improving. Shinso replied, looking down at the ground. Well, you can't expect to learn it all in one day, Aizawa added. You know, you and I are alike as well as Eraser, Midoriya said, as he made his way to the center of the gym. How so? Shinso asked. We don't have quirks with overwhelming power. Aizawa has his quirk erasing, you have your brainwash quirk, and I don't have a quirk at all. Midoriya explained, taking off his coat and throwing it to the side, only leaving his shirt and tie in the end. People with quirks that give no physical enhancement are only human. A well-placed bullet is all it would take. Midoriya explained. Shinso gulped and listened carefully. So we need to learn how to avoid that by being able to predict and take down our opponents quickly. Pushing our bodies to the very limit. Midoriya explained, rolling up his sleeves. So you don't have a quirk and you are that strong? Shinso asked. Shinso and the school were aware of Deku and some of his past. I like to think I can handle myself. Are you ready? Midoriya asked, taking a fighting stance. Yes. Shinso said, full of determination. Vigilance X slaughter. Midoriya dashed and was in Shinso's face in a second. Shinso tried to use the scarf Aizawa had given him to defend himself, but it was too late. Midoriya had already pinned him to the ground. So what do you think? Midoriya asked, getting off Shinso. That's amazing. Shinso said, amazed at Midoriya's speed and power. Shinso, people like us must learn these things because it's as he said. Without these skills we are sitting ducks in this world of heroes and villains, Aizawa said as he picked up Midoriya's jacket and handed it to him. How about you and me, Eraser? A small fight just to show Shinso what he will learn, Midoriya asked, hanging his jacket off to the side. I haven't had a good clean fight in a while, Aizawa said, doing a few stretches. Shinso let Midoriya borrow the cloth for a second. Aizawa added, you know how to use this thing? Shinso asked, handing Midoriya the binding cloth. Yeah, I learned how to use it a while ago in my off time, although it's nothing compared to this guy's technique, Midoriya said, wrapping the cloth in his forearms instead of his neck. The forearms, huh? Aizawa said, watching Midoriya. I think it feels better this way for me, Midoriya said as he took his fighting stance. Let's see them, Aizawa said as he dashed towards Midoriya and shot out his binding cloth. Midoriya dodged by jumping to the side, but Aizawa was ready and had sent another part of his cloth in that direction. Midoriya smiled and soon he was being pulled in towards Aizawa, followed by a knee to his stomach. Nice, Midoriya said with a cough as he broke free and gained some distance. Midoriya enjoyed his fights with Aizawa since it involved pure combat ability. My turn, Midoriya said as he flung out his arms and the binding cloth wrapped onto Aizawa's leg. Midoriya yanked the cloth and Aizawa fell onto his back and slid towards Midoriya. Aizawa broke free and flipped the tables by using the momentum to try and land a punch at Midoriya. Aizawa nearly landed the hit when Midoriya blocked it with his hand. Ah shit, Aizawa said as he noticed that Midoriya was after this the whole time. Midoriya bound Aizawa around his wrist and flipped him, slamming him into the ground. Aizawa let out a cough and caught his breath as he backed away. These fights never get old, Midoriya said in between breaths. Aizawa smiled quickly and dashed at Midoriya. Vigilance. Midoriya just barely dodged and soon he was behind Aizawa. Slaughter. Midoriya kicked Aizawa in his ribs, causing him to recoil in pain, but Aizawa quickly used his bindings to bind Midoriya and kicking him in the face afterward. Midoriya and Aizawa caught their breath and ran towards each other with smiles on their face. A good friendly fight always made them ecstatic. Midoriya threw a kick while Aizawa threw a punch, however they both connected right in the jaw, knocking them both out instantly. A few minutes later, Midoriya and Aizawa stared at the ceiling while laying on their backs. Ow, Midoriya said with a smile. Yeah, my ribs hurt. Aizawa sighed with a chuckle. Shinso had kept his eyes glued on them the entire fight and was amazed they were at such level. Wow, that was amazing, Shinso said, walking over to Midoriya and Aizawa. Anyway, in time, you will be able to do this and more, Aizawa said, struggling to get up. Just keep training, Midoriya said, getting up and dusting himself off. I'm ready, Shinso said, full of determination. Then let's get to it, Midoriya said, handing Shinso the binding cloth back. But first a break, Aizawa said, back to his usual self. Shinso, Aizawa, and Midoriya sat along the wall drinking energy pouches before going back to training. The next day. Midoriya. Iri would like to see you and Mirko, Aizawa said to Midoriya. So Mirko and Iri know about my vigilante status now? Midoriya asked calmly. Mirko and Iri wanted to know who the masked man who saved the day was, so after some talking with the principal we came to the conclusion that they deserved to know after what they went through, Aizawa explained. Saving the day? Didn't think he'd ever hear that, Midoriya asked, reviewing some papers. Well, how is Lemillion doing? Midoriya asked. He's a lot better, but obviously a bit hurt from Nighteye, Aizawa said, handing Midoriya a folder from the previous class. Alright, well, I'll be there, Midoriya said, grabbing his things and walking out the door. 2 hours later. Midoriya was standing outside the door and walked in on Iri and Mirko talking with Aizawa in the corner, keeping an eye. Problem child, Mirko said, happily greeting Midoriya. Afternoon, Midoriya said, greeting the Mirko and Iri. There was a pause and Mirko put 2 and 2 together. Wait, Midoriya is Hope? Mirko said, dumbfounded. Iri was now staring at Midoriya, her second savior who put his life on the line for her. But that power, I thought you were quirkless, Mirko said, looking over at Aizawa. I won't go into specifics, but just know that these quirks were forced onto him against his will, Aizawa explained briefly. I knew you had it in you, problem child. Imagine us heroes side by side, Mirko said with a bright smile. I'm no hero, Midoriya interjected. Then what are you? I don't even know what I am anymore, Iri said sadly. I wanted to know your name since I only knew Lemillion, but when they told me if I wanted to know who you were I needed to know. I've caused you all so much trouble, and the man with glasses got really hurt. It's because of me you all got hurt, and Lemillion lost his powers because of me, Iri said, tearing up. The guilt is tearing her apart, Midoriya thought as he listened to her words. No, we're happy you're safe. Everyone who fought wanted to see you smile, Mirko explained. Iri tried to force a smile but she couldn't. How do I smile again? Iri asked. Midoriya felt for this girl, she had suffered so much. You know, I couldn't smile for a long time either, and to be honest I find it hard to even crack a smile now, but I know now that people who care for you will be able to bring it out of you, Midoriya explained to Iri. Midoriya approached Iri's bed and knelt on the floor. You know, I'm not a hero or villain and I'm just a part-time vigilante, but to tell you the truth I don't know what I am, either. I know one thing however, Iri, you're a little girl and little girls deserve to be happy, Midoriya said with a smile that brightened the room. Iri had been a bit scared of Midoriya and his cold expression, but his smile and words showed how much he really cared. Midoriya got up and suggested an idea. Eraser, what are the chances we can get Iri to enjoy the festival the students are putting on? Midoriya asked, pulling out his folder and looking over the class's suggestions and the events that will be held. Yay! That's a great idea. Iri, you can come to the cultural festival, Mirko said happily. Cultural festival? Iri asked. Yay, it's where our school's students make food and events. And apples. Sweetened apples to the point of almost being candy, Mirko explained happily. Sweetened, Iri said, drooling a bit. Seems she likes apples and sweets. Midoriya though, as he took a mental note. I'll talk it over with the principal, Aizawa said, looking at his phone. So what do you think, Iri? Midoriya asked the girl. I've been thinking about Lemillion and everyone else who saved me. I want to get to know them more, Iri explained. Well, Aizawa will do what he can and I'm sure Mirko will too. I'll try and pull whatever strings I got, Midoriya said, also sending a couple of messages elsewhere. A well-dressed man walked out of a convenience store with a cane with defeated prose at his side. I wish for my name to be etched into history. Yes. It is I, gentle criminal said as he faced the camera. But listen. La Brava said, stomping her foot. It's been 6 years since you showed yourself as the villain of the media world, and then suddenly there is Deku guy in that league of villains. Now when you look up villains, that league just shows up and it's full of disgusting violence. I mean, who even is this Deku guy anyway? He got caught, and don't even get me started on this new guy Hope. Just who does this guy think he is stealing your thunder? La, Brava explained with a pout. Even though my comments are disheartening, I will not be discouraged. And why? Because we'll surpass even theirs. Gentle said loud and proud. So cool. Tell me, Gentle, what is the next project? La Brava said, squealing like a fangirl back at us. The students were making a ruckus in the dorms, choosing their roles for the concert when Midoriya walked in. The class didn't notice. So we should put 4 on the floor and make a rave-style concert, Jiro explained to the class. Midoriya was off typing away and writing things down in his notebook. So has anyone ever played bass or drums? Jiro asked her classmates. The class went silent. I figured. Even though the backbone of the band is the drums, I'm a beginner since I mainly play the guitar. If I have to teach someone how to play while practicing myself in 1 month, it's going to be tight. Jiro explained to her classmate Sa. You were forced to go to a music class a while back, right? Kaminari asked Bukagu out of the blue. Bukagu said back in a scary face. Bukagu, why don't you try playing the drums? Sero asked, holding up the drumsticks. Can't someone else do it? Bukagu asked, annoyed. I guess it's too hard for you, Sero said, taunting Bukagu. Bukagu said as he showed off his skills on the drums. So perfect? Jiro said, amazed at his drumming. The entire class was amazed at Bukagu. So Bukagu will be drums? Kaminari said, making the decision for him. Bukagu said once more, I ain't doing any of this pointless shit, Bukagu said angrily, walking away. Midoriya raised a quick eye to glance at the class and went back to work. Bukagu, please. Or rather, if you do this for me, you'll be a good person, Jiro said, chasing after Bukagu. Nothing will come of it. Bukagu shouted back, you guys are selling this as a stress reliever for other departments, aren't ya? Doing all this shit in the name of stress relief. What is this other than self-gratification? Bukagu asked angrily. People that sicken me don't deserve my courtesy, Bukagu said angrily. A bit far, isn't it? Midoriya thought, not looking up from his computer. Hey, man, don't talk like that, Hagakure said, a bit steamed. I'm just saying don't indulge the enemy. Bukagu replied angrily, don't speak ill of us if you didn't even participate in the conversation. Todoroki jumped in. Isn't it sickening? Bukagu asked. We aren't getting smacked by villains cause we enjoy it. Why do we have to concern ourselves with other people's feelings? If you're also intent with pleasing everyone, then just quit. It's not about indulgence, it's a battle. Everybody in new.a, I'll knock you dead with my sound, Bukagu shouted. The motivation isn't the best, but he's gonna do it. We did it right, Jiro? Hagakure said happily. I'll do my best, Jiro said with a smile. Midoriya was typing away when he faintly heard his name. Midoriya? Mina asked, finally grabbing his attention. Yes, Midoriya said, looking up from his computer. I was asking if you wanted to be a part of the dance team, Mina said, showing who was in the group. It's going to be fun. Deku. Your Araka said with a smile. Mina was worried what Midoriya would say at being called Deku. I'm sorry everyone, I'm going to be security this time around, but feel free to send me to do your errands as I have to support and overlook what you all do, Midoriya replied. The class was a bit disappointed but understanding. However, they had a question. Hey, why is your Araka calling you by your villain name? Kaminari asked. I am also puzzled, Tenya added. Yeah, what gives? Is this some secret between you two? Mina asked with a pout. The class got the idea what Deku meant, so they were confused why your Araka was using it in such a friendly manner. I think Deku sounds like you can do it, your Araka said with a smile. Like she said, but it'll take some getting used to. However, please call me what you wish, class, Midoriya said with a short smile, before going back to work. And it is very late, you should all go to bed, Midoriya advised the students. Okay, the students said with a yawn. The students all slowly began to go to their rooms. I like calling him Midoriya, Kaminari said to Sero. Yeah, it feels natural, but Deku sounds cool, Sero replied. Don't you already call him Deku? Kirishima asked. Bukagu shut its shitty hair. Bukagu replied. Good night, Deku, your Araka said, waving at Midoriya. Good night, your Araka. Midoriya replied, looking up from his laptop. There was only one left in the room. Hey, Mina said, sitting next to Midoriya on the couch. Hello, Mina, little night owl, aren't you? Midoriya said with a short chuckle. Kinda. Mina replied with a chuckle, I think your Araka wants to be better friends with you. She told me she wanted to get to know you better along with some other students. Mina said with a smile. I see. Well, I see no reason to refuse. Maybe I will do a little something to connect with the class more. Midoriya replied with a smile. Mina really liked his smile and she couldn't help but feel happy. Good night, Midoriya, Mina said as she rustled up Midoriya's hair before leaving. Good night, Mina. Midoriya replied with a chuckle. Mina stuck out her tongue playfully and went to her room. She had a jump in her step going back. 11 p.m. Midoriya had his vigilante suit on. He needed some fresh air. Let's see the book, Midoriya said as he opened his large hardcover book full of notes. The book was full of information on heroes, standalone villains, vigilantes and factions. The page he read went as followed. Points of interest: villains, gentle criminal. As his name implies, the crimes he commits are not riddled with violence, but his quirk elasticity is strong if used correctly. Quirk elasticity law: Brava follows gentle criminal around recording his deeds, and as expected she is not violent. Her quirk love is only allowed to be used after 24 hours, but the boost is notable. Quirk love, Izuku. After some investigating I found no trace left. I had to make sure. Confirmed deceased Quirk Queen Bee, the peerless thief Ojihirima, under investigation. Quirk? The hero killer stain, no recent murders for his cause. Could it have been me? Although amazing in combat, he loses himself when he becomes desperate, causing him to make reckless decisions. I, however, have these habits as well. Quirk Blood Curdle Factions, League of Villains run by Shigaraki Tamura. Shigaraki has made some interesting moves befitting of a leader, but the league is in a rough spot without All for One Meta Liberation Army run by Yatsubashi Rikiya. I don't know much about him, but I know he hides his true intentions while using his position as CEO of Detnarat as cover. His subordinates are not weak in the slightest either. Security is too tight and he doesn't show more than he needs to. Yakuza/8 triceps disbanded. Vigilantes Crawler, Pop Step, Knuckle Duster Eraser told me about these few once before, but all these guys have gone quiet. I wonder what happened. Midoriya closed his book and put it away before using his gauntlets to grapple away. In an abandoned alley, Midoriya had just caught a potential murderer trying to kill 3 teens. Stay out of my way, the criminal said as he dashed at Midoriya with a large kitchen knife. Midoriya dodged the swing and grabbed the man's dominant arm and broke it. The criminal was about to scream in pain when Midoriya began to choke him. Sleep. Midoriya whispered as he choked the man. The man slowly fell unconscious and slumped down. Thank you, the 3 teens said as they ran away. Midoriya did not respond and just began to tie up the criminal. Midoriya was almost done when he heard almost like a thump nearby, and he stood up instantly ready to react, but it was too late. Found ya! Mirko shouted as she kicked Midoriya in his ribs. If Midoriya had waited for even a second to get up, he would have had a clean blow to his head. The bunny hero Mirko, Midoriya thought as he tried to get up, but to no avail. Midoriya then proceeded to cough up a large amount of blood. Trying to kill me, huh? Midoriya said with a cough. Not really, but I just broke a few of your ribs so you couldn't run away, Mirko said as she looked over at Midoriya. Yeah, something is broken for sure, Midoriya said as he looked over at the brown girl. Vigilante or villain, you're still a criminal in my eyes, Mirko said as she pulled out some handcuffs. Midoriya couldn't get caught, he had to run. Vigilance X slaughter. Midoriya pupils became small and his movements were as sharp as ever. Move, Midoriya told his body. Whoa, settle down there, Mirko was saying when to her amazement Midoriya got up and used his gauntlet to grapple to the roof of a building. Not so fast, Mirko shouted as she hopped after him. Weakling, don't run, Mirko shouted as she hopped after Midoriya. Midoriya was grappling to you, but mixing up the routes so it didn't seem obvious. Your body is going to give out eventually, you know, Mirko shouted as she slowly began to catch up to Midoriya. Midoriya in the middle of his leap turned around and faced Mirko. Midoriya used his gauntlet to grapple on a nearby building to gain momentum towards Mirko. Midoriya threw a punch with the momentum he gained, which connected with Mirko on her stomach, causing her to vomit a little bit. Not so weak after all, Mirko said with a smile as she took her fighting position. I can't hold on anymore, Midoriya thought as he grabbed onto his side. Not like this, Midoriya thought as he began to black out. I must take over, Midoriya muttered as he looked up at Mirko. His eyes were diluted and lifeless. What the? Mirko thought as she took a step back at what she was looking at. Flashback. Sixth sense, Stain said to Midoriya, who was eating his food like in the movies. Midoriya asked, no, that's just some garbage the media tells you. No, the real sixth sense is something that can only be achieved by some people. Stain explained. If it's not like they say, then what is it? Midoriya asked Stain, who was drawing something. The five senses are sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. But the sixth sense isn't something that is attainable by training, it is something that just happens in your mind. I heard a story of a man acquiring his sixth sense when his wife was murdered in front of him, Stain said as he showed Midoriya a diagram of a body. The news chalked it up as him losing his mind, but what really happened was he snapped and it triggered his sixth sense, which allowed him to gain vengeance for his wife. This ability is not as good as you think it is though. The man, after getting his vengeance, actually killed himself not long after because his mind couldn't mentally grasp that state of mind. Much like if someone gave you the grasp of time itself, you wouldn't be able to process it. Stain explained to Midoriya. Well, why use it if you just are going to lose your mind? Midoriya said only select people can use it, anyone can trigger it. The selected are using it without even knowing it. Stain said as he got up from the table. I had this idea that the sixth sense was like knowing the future or something, Midoriya said with a laugh. Flashback. In sixth sense, Midoriya took a fighting stance and got ready to fight. Chapter 21. Midoriya was standing across from Mirko ready to fight. You okay? You're not dying, are ya? Mirko asked, a bit worried. Midoriya didn't reply and dashed towards her at an incredible speed. Whoa there! Mirko said, jumping back and distancing herself from Midoriya. Midoriya calmly looked at Mirko and then quickly used his gauntlets to get to the roof of a nearby building. Oh no, you don't! Mirko shouted, jumping after Midoriya. Mirko thought Midoriya was going to flee, but to her surprise, Midoriya quickly turned around in midair and shot his gauntlet toward Mirko, which missed but connected on the pavement below and pulled himself towards Mirko. Oh shit! Mirko said, barely dodging Midoriya in midair. Midoriya missed, but he quickly turned and shot his other gauntlet, allowing the line to wrap around Mirko's leg, and Midoriya slammed Mirko down. Mirko had the wind knocked out of her after being slammed that hard. Stay down, Midoriya said, looking down on the hero. Grr, I'm no weakling, Mirko shouted, getting back up quickly and attempted kick Midoriya in the head, to which he blocked with ease. Why? Midoriya said, grabbing both her legs and using the momentum against her, and slammed her into the ground. Mirko was back on the ground and Midoriya stood over her, but with a closed fist aimed at her face. Do it then, Mirko shouted angrily, ready to receive the beating. No, Midoriya replied quickly, using his gauntlets to make his getaway. Mirko was laying on the ground and let out an angry sigh after being beaten. Shit, Mirko said, frustrated, slamming the pavement with her fist. Midoriya was soon back at Udate and quickly snuck into his room. Sixth sense had already worn off and Midoriya was feeling all the pain from his fight. Phone, where is? Midoriya said, and between painful breaths Midoriya quickly found his phone and called Aizawa. Yay? Aizawa answered in a groggy voice. I need help. My room, Midoriya said as he passed out with the phone in his hand. Midoriya stared at his ceiling and blacked out. A few hours later, Midoriya woke up in the nurse's office. Nezu, Nighteye, and Recovery Girl were all talking. I'm guessing she knows now, Midoriya said, staring at the ceiling. Yeah, way to go and almost get yourself killed. Eraser said jokingly. It's alright, Midoriya. We imagined this would happen at one point, Nezu said with a smile. But you, what did you do out there to get these injuries? Recover Girl said angrily in a motherly tone. I stopped a criminal and the hero Mirko landed a kick on my ribs. Midoriya sighed disappointedly at himself that he got caught off guard anyway. Don't pull these kinds of stunts. Any later and your lungs could have collapsed. Recovery girl said, bopping Midoriya in the head with her cane. Yes, ma'am, Midoriya replied. Aizawa chuckled a bit at Midoriya being so submissive to an old lady. Yeah, laugh it up, Midoriya said with a smile. It's ironic to see the one most against Midoriya's being here is now a close friend. Nezu thought, looking at Midoriya, and Aizawa happily chatted up about what happened in the fight. The next day in Gamut Gym. The day of the festival. Midoriya was alone in the gym. Let's see, Midoriya said to himself as he stared at his arm. Midoriya was switching between all his quirks and then combining them in every form so he could memorize the feeling. Not that hard, Midoriya said, repeating the process multiple times. Midoriya's strength enhancer quirk was strong enough to smash through rock at full power, but it wasn't anything too special. His kinetic quirks were not really useful by themselves, but mixed with the strength quirk he could store up its energy and release it 2x its power because of the kinetic quirks. The deadliest and most complicated quirk was air cannons. Air would be released from Midoriya, and depending on the way he moved or chose to emit the air, it could take many forms. Todoroki had this movement when using his ice. Midoriya thought, thinking back on the U.A Sports Festival. Midoriya lowered his arms to his side and mimicked Todoroki's movement. The air released from Midoriya's arm ripped apart the concrete floor for a couple of feet before dissipating. And that's without the other quirks, Midoriya said, taking a closer look at the damage. Midoriya practiced for a few more hours and soon began to make his way back to his room. It was around 10 a.m. Depending on the form of my hand, the quirk air cannon can have many forms, Midoriya wrote down in his journal before putting it away. Midoriya, Aizawa said, catching the boy's attention. Oh, eraser, Midoriya replied, turning to face the sluggish man and Eri. Midoriya said with a smile. Hello, Midoriya, Eri said nervously. Uraraka and Asui and the others were gathering something when they ran into Midoriya and the rest. Some stayed behind while others went inside. Mirko was behind a bush trying to think of a way to make everyone laugh. Hey, is that Eri? Uraraka and Asui asked in unison. The peach is ripe, Mirko said, poking butt out of the bush. Is that Senpai's kid? Ojiro asked loudly. Deku, this is Eri. Isn't she the cutest? Uraraka said, looking at Eri in her cute outfit. Deku? Eri asked, confused. Oh, yay, that's what I call him. It sounds like you can do it, doesn't it? Uraraka said with a big smile, white throwing a fist in the air. It does. Eri replied shyly. There was a quick pause. Can I call you Deku? Eri asked. Midoriya shyly, call me whatever you want, Midoriya said, kneeling down with a warm smile. The students around him were surprised he was so kind and warm to Eri. So bright, the students thought as they saw Midoriya and his smile. The students soon said their goodbyes, and it was only Aizawa, Eri, Mirko, and Midoriya. Aizawa pulled Midoriya to the side and spoke with him. Listen, I got things to do, so keep an eye on the girl. She won't go on another rampage, but try your best to keep her calm, Aizawa explained while putting on some eye drops. Yeah, I read you. Don't worry about it, Midoriya said, walking back to Mirko and Eri. Well, how about we go see the preparations for a bit, right, Eri? Mirko said with a smile. Okay, Eri said in a low voice. I'll be joining you guys if that's okay, Midoriya said, catching up with the two. Eri was relieved her two saviors were with her instead of one. The three set off and explored the festival. Deku, are you okay? Eri asked Midoriya. I'm not used to these things, Midoriya replied. Problem child, here's a special kinda guy, Mirko said with a laugh. Well, I'm not used to it either, Eri said. Then I guess we're in the same boat, aren't we? Midoriya replied with a smile. The festival was lively, but Eri still wasn't sold on it yet. Mirko signaled Midoriya in secret to help him out with cheering up Eri. My students are making a concert. Would you like to go? Midoriya asked Eri. What's a concert? Eri asked. How about you go and find out, Midoriya replied, making it sound like something amazing. Eri seemed hesitant. After the concert, I'll have some candy apples waiting for you, I promise. Midoriya said, using his knowledge of her sweet tooth. That sounds nice. Eri replied, trying to hide her craving for the apple. Midoriya's phone rang and got a message from his class. Supplies. I might as well get something I need as well, and I need to deal with that issue. Midoriya thought, quickly making his way to where Aizawa was posted. Aizawa was in his sleeping bag drinking a protein bag. The class wants me to pick something up. Midoriya said, catching the man's attention. Huh? Oh yeah, go for it. Just make sure to wear what we discussed. Aizawa replied with a yawn. Alright. Midoriya said, turning to go to his room when Aizawa spoke up, and wear a mask or something. Aizawa said, snuggling back into his sleeping bag. Midoriya went to his room and dressed into a U.A hoodie which was designed like the gym clothes, and put on a surgical mask to cover his mouth. Midoriya had his 2 bags and began to make his way back to U.A when he ran into a certain pair. Excuse me. Midoriya said, hiding his face. You should be more careful. Gentle said behind his mask. The aftertaste of the golden tips was almost ruined. Gentle added, Midoriya finally found him, the person he was looking for. Flashback. Midoriya was updating his notebook on villains of interest when he found a video uploaded by the Gentle criminal. This will be a wake-up call to not just to listeners but to society as a whole. Gentle explained into the camera as he sipped some tea. Just what I needed. Midoriya sighed as he began to make countermeasures for Gentle criminal. Flashback. And so you're planning on messing with U.A? Midoriya asked, masking his voice. I wouldn't dream of it, young man. I was just getting my tea. Gentle said, pointing at the rundown shop. Let me guess. Walk down this street on a Saturday with no people and even fewer hero agencies and sneak by? Maybe go into the nearby park? Well, if you made this far, then I would guess you reach the top of the forested hill and make it to U.A. But since Hound Dog is on outer security, you're going mask your sense in something and your assistant will hack into the neural network and take down the sensors. Midoriya explained to Gentle and La Brava. Gentle, what do we do? La Brava asked. La Brava, get the camera ready. Gentle said in a serious tone, taking off his disguise. I got a promise to keep. Midoriya said, setting down his bags. La Brava, no matter what happens, don't stop filming. Gentle said loudly, listeners, you're watching attempt to enter U.A. Gentle said into the camera as he took off his coat in a flashy way. I can't win this fight if I let him do what he wants. Midoriya thought as he dashed towards Gentle. Midoriya was about to punch him, but something flung him back, skidding across the ground. If you know this much about me, you know my quirk is elasticity. Anything I touch can become elastic. Gentle explained to Midoriya. Crafty guy made it when he took off his coat. Midoriya said with a chuckle, taking a mental note on that trick. Midoriya looked up and saw Gentle and La Brava begin to make a run for it. Don't run. Midoriya said, chasing after them. Gentle touched the ground beneath him and made Midoriya bounce high into the air and give himself time to run away. This height is going to break more than a few bones. Midoriya thought as he watched Gentle make his getaway. Guess I need to use it. Midoriya said, turning his body quickly to Gentle's. Midoriya made his hand in the shape of a gun with his index finger pointed at Gentle and activated air cannon. The burst of air was strong enough to knock the wind out of Gentle instantly. Midoriya flew towards a telephone pole and used it to push himself onto a nearby rooftop. What was that? Gentle thought, looking back at the boy who was already right behind him. Like I said, I have a promise. Midoriya said loudly as he tried to pin Gentle. This youth. How rude. Gentle said, angrily bouncing Midoriya and himself into a nearby construction site. Looks like an accident just happened, said the old man walking by. I need to watch the power. Midoriya thought as he was getting up from the ground. My what a situation. But I will not be shaken. Gentle said as he dangled from a large metal beam. I shall execute my plan at any cost. This is my resolve. A gentleman will not be deterred. Gentle shouted triumphantly. Listen, how about I cut you a deal? Midoriya said, looking at the man dangling. Oh, a deal? Let us hear it then, youngster. Gentle criminal said, crossing his legs while still in midair. The school is on high alert since the League of Villains debut, and if anything sets off the alarm or you get caught, it all gets cut off. I have made a promise to certain someone that they will enjoy themselves today. All I ask is you hold off your plan for another day. Midoriya explained, trying to use his time as a villain to get on his good side. There was a short pause and Gentle spoke. First off, don't lump me in with the League of Villains. Second of all, I have no intention of pillaging and plundering. I simply want to invade the cultural festival, and do not worry about the alarms. My La Brava will shut them down and the alarm won't ring. See, a win-win. Gentle replied, trying to convince Midoriya that is why the sooner I get there the less trouble there will be. Gentle added, I'm not in the mood for this today. Midoriya-san, rubbing his eyes, you should have looked the other way, young man. Gentle said, then I'll have to put you down, gentle criminal. Midoriya said in a cold voice, then we are at an impasse. Gentle said, making an air bubble and jumping onto a nearby metal beam. Now while I still have the taste of black tea in my mouth. Begone, student of Vigilante. Gentle said as he used the metal bar to bounce around randomly like a pinball. Midoriya's eyes couldn't keep up with Gentle. Vigilance. Midoriya soon was able to track Gentle, but even with Vigilance he was moving far too quickly to react. Damn, Midoriya was about to say when he took a blow to the neck. I know you have some sort of bullet, so I will counter it with an air shield. Gentle said. Gentle, I know it's frustrating, but let's retreat. La Brava said to Gentle. Nay, La Brava. Gentle said, I need to subdue him. Midoriya thought as he was dashing towards Gentle, since you're the type to look into the details, I didn't mention that the bolts on this here beam have been removed by yours truly. Gentle added, jumping away from the beam. There was an old man down below, and if no one did anything he was going to be crushed. What do I do? Midoriya thought, standing underneath the falling beam. On one hand, Midoriya could ignore the beam and catch Gentle right then and there, but at the same time, the man below could be crushed. Midoriya was strong, but catching a metal beam would simply crush him. Without a quirk, people like me are obsolete. Midoriya's own voice rang in his head as he told his students those words. TCH. Midoriya said angrily, standing below the beam's strength. Quirk 1x kinetic quirks. Midoriya caught the beam with ease and pushed the kinetic energy the beam had into the ground below him, causing the ground to shake like a mini earthquake. You could have killed me or that old man down there. Midoriya said, looking up at Gentle. Well, that wasn't the plan. I simply wanted you to be occupied, and I planned to make the beam bounce back so it would fall down. Gentle explained. Still, you have a fearsome amount of speed and power. Gentle praised Midoriya with a smile. Please stay here and endure it while I execute my plan. Gentle added while making a nearby crane flexible so he could fly away. You Gentle is so dirty. La Brava said quickly. Now don't be nervous. Gentle said to his assistant before Gentle and La Brava could fly away. Midoriya spoke up. What? Did you think I was holding this thing because I couldn't move it? Midoriya said, looking over at the pair. Huh? La Brava said, looking at Midoriya. Gentle noticed that the old man was no longer in harm's way and understood what Midoriya meant. Now that he's gone. Midoriya said, throwing the beam off to the side. Gentle flew away with La Brava and made it into the forest near you. Gentle, this kid is no joke. I'm going to have to use my quirk. La Brava said to Gentle. Midoriya had used the same crane to fly towards them. I wanted to use your quirk as a last resort for when we had to escape. But it seems we will have to use it now if we want our plan to succeed. Gentle said as he landed safely with La Brava. Gentle and La Brava were going to talk about their battle plan, but Midoriya was already about to land. So fast. Gentle thought as he watched Midoriya use the air bubbles to soften his landing. Midoriya made a gun-like shape with his right hand and aimed for Gentle. Not so fast. Gentle thought, making an air shield, but Midoriya had seen that coming. Midoriya landed next to Gentle and aimed at his side to bait out another air shield. There. Midoriya said, pointing at Gentle. Air shield in the air which ricocheted into Gentle's chest. Midoriya shot towards them both and pinned them down. I can't move a muscle. Gentle thought as he lay on the ground. You're both going to the police. Midoriya said, my ray of hope. His dream of becoming known to the world is being destroyed. My Gentle. La Brava thought as she watched Gentle's eyes shift into sadness. Gentle. La Brava said softly. Midoriya was about to call in Aizawa when he heard her speak. Shit. Midoriya said, taking his hand off Gentle's back and tried to cover her mouth, but it was too late. I'm in love with you. La Brava said with tears in her eyes. Thank you, La Brava. Gentle said with a warm smile. Love. What a strange quirk to have. Damn, not for these two however. Midoriya thought, watching as steam began to radiate from Gentle. I'm sorry, young man. I don't like to solve things with brute force, but at times like these I tend to cut back. Gentle said, flipping Midoriya with ease, and held La Brava in his arms. Gentle went for a knockout in the back of Midoriya's neck. I'm sorry boy, but love always in the end. Gentle said, striking Midoriya, but only to be blocked by Midoriya's arm. Midoriya jumped back and gained some ground. Not always. Midoriya said with cold eyes staring down Gentle. Gentle used multiple layers of elasticity to slam Midoriya into the ground. I want to accomplish my dream from my middle school years. Gentle said in a solemn voice. Midoriya broke free of the attack and kicked Gentle in the stomach, giving himself some space. I know all about you and your past. Gentle. Midoriya said, shooting an air bullet which Gentle dodged just barely. How would you know? Gentle shouted. Midoriya thought about the consequences and decided. Screw it. Midoriya thought as he took off his hood and surgical mask. La Brava said, looking at Midoriya. You're the feared Deku. Heroes and villains still utter your name in fear even after your arrest. Gentle said, looking at Midoriya. You wanted to be a hero, Danjiro Tabata, but after you tried to save a man with your quirk you were shunned and punished for trying to do the right thing. This so-called hero society crushed your dreams and you were forced to take up this role as a last-ditch effort to achieve your dream. Midoriya said. Gentle's eyes widened that Midoriya knew so much about him. I was the same. Shunned for wanting to become a hero, and the world just stood by and laughed at me. An insignificant person in this world. Midoriya said angrily. This boy could start his own villain faction and destroy this entire society of heroes and villains on his own. Gentle thought as he listened to Midoriya's words. Even so, Deku, I will not back down and I will achieve my dream. Gentle said, dashing towards Midoriya and clashing head-on with him. Midoriya and Gentle bumped heads and let their true emotions show for once. Please win, Gentle. La Brava shouted, giving Gentle more power. If you are no longer a villain and don't strive to be a hero, then what are you, huh? Gentle shouted as he began to overpower Midoriya. Midoriya said angrily, pushing Gentle back a bit. Tell me. Gentle shouted, I don't know. Midoriya shouted back, activating all his quirks at once. Midoriya's body felt like it was burning all over, but it allowed him to overpower Gentle. I'll defeat you even if it means disregarding my reputation and style. Gentle shouted angrily. Gentle began to bounce around all the trees and landed a solid blow on Midoriya's side, causing him to vomit a little. Midoriya saw Gentle still bouncing around and noticed he was going to be above him in 2 jumps. Meanwhile, Ectoplasm and Hound Dog were making their way to the commotion. Come on! Midoriya shouted. Gentle was where Midoriya predicted he would be, and Midoriya shot an air bullet directly at Gentle, causing him to fly a bit upwards. It's over. Midoriya said as he grabbed Gentle by his right forearm and slammed him into the ground. Gentle, the heroes are coming. La Brava said, running over towards where Midoriya and Gentle were fighting, but Gentle was on the ground defeated. Please run away. Gentle said weakly, you were the smartest and strongest guy I've ever fought against. Some just fling their power around, but you have an impressive control of your quirk. Midoriya said, praising Gentle. No, not KITOFF. Let him go. La Brava said with tears in her eyes. Gentle poured his heart and soul into this plan. Who's my light and you going to take him away from me? La Brava shouted at Midoriya. There was a pause. I can't let her be an accomplice. She is innocent in all this. Gentle thought, preparing his hand to bounce Midoriya away to make it seem like the fight never happened. Midoriya stopped Gentle from bouncing him away. Gentle, I know what you're going to do, but before you do it, let me help you, Midoriya said, sitting Gentle up. If I leave Her sentence and yours will be less severe, but Hound Dog will not believe that story, so here's how it's going to go down. Midoriya explained to the both of them. Why are you helping us? La Brava asked the question that was on both their minds. Gentle, La Brava, I have been struggling to find my place in this world, and after fighting you, Gentle, I feel like I can think more clearly now. All I want in return is for you to never mention this to anyone. Please. Midoriya explained. Oh, and my real name is Izuku Midoriya. Midoriya said, extending a hand to Gentle. It was nice to meet you, Midoriya. Gentle said with a smile, shaking his hand, and made an air bubble nearby. Midoriya picked up his surgical mask which was on the floor nearby and put it on. I'll see you around, Gentle criminal. Midoriya said as he took his place. Gentle. La Brava said, burying her face into his chest. It seems we've hit a roadblock. Gentle said, hugging La Brava. We would like to surrender. Gentle said as he was surrounded by ectoplasm and Hound Dog. 3 people, 2 with high elevated respiration and agitation. Is it a lost child, an injured person, or a fool? Hound Dog said, walking toward their location. Hound Dog and ectoplasm were digging into Gentle. So who is this last smell? A student or someone else, because I don't recognize this smell. Hound Dog shouted angrily. The boy is right over there. Gentle said, pointing a patch of bushes. Midoriya appeared and caught Hound Dog off guard since he didn't sense him or smell him nearby. Young man, did you fight this man? Hound Dog asked. Yes, he wanted to prank you, but I stopped him by fighting him for a minute. Midoriya said, pretending to be in a coughing fit. Mr. Hound Dog, can I go back? Midoriya asked, changing his voice. Sure, go enjoy yourself. Hound Dog said. Hound Dog knew something was up, but Gentle didn't seem like a threat, and the girl was definitely not brainwashed, as Gentle stated. Snipe, we have it covered here. It was just a troublesome uploader looking for some fame. Hound Dog said over the radio. Midoriya soon made it back to Aizawa after going back to pick up his grocery bags near the street. I already know what happened already. You look like shit, Aizawa chuckled, looking at Midoriya. Shut it. I'm so tired. Midoriya said, changing back into his normal clothes and taking a load off with Aizawa under the shade here. Aizawa said, handing Midoriya a protein pack along with Midoriya's own sleeping bag. Something is there. Some students said in unison after seeing Midoriya and Aizawa in their cocoons. Well, time to get to work. Midoriya said, rolling up the sleeves of his shirt, and made his way to a nearby cooking table. Midoriya could hear the music of the concert in the distance, and it sounded like a wild time. Hope she enjoys it. Midoriya said with a sigh. A few hours later, Eri, Aizawa, and Mirko were at the front of the school. Today was fun. Mirko said happily. Yay. Eri replied, ready to get going? Aizawa asked. Eri, hold up. Midoriya said, walking towards Eri with something hidden behind his back. So how was it? Midoriya asked Eri, and Mirko. She smiled. Mirko mouthed to Midoriya, it was pretty fun, but it would have been cool to see you dance or something. I didn't get to have a candy apple though. Eri sighed sadly. I'm sorry, but the candy apples, now that is inexcusable. Midoriya said as he handed Eri a candy apple. Were they selling those? I couldn't find them anywhere. Mirko said with a surprised look. I had to go to the store and buy the ingredients so I could make them myself. Midoriya explained, it's even sweeter than I thought. Eri said with a smile as she bit into the apple. I made a batch so you can have another one tomorrow, Eri. Midoriya said, handing Aizawa a box of candy apples. So the King of Ice has a heart. Aizawa said with a low chuckle, taking the bag from Midoriya. Even I have one eraser. Midoriya replied with a smile. So it seems. Aizawa thought as he watched Midoriya say goodbye to Eri. I'll see you soon, Eri. Midoriya said, waving goodbye to the group. Mirko was walking alongside Aizawa and Eri when he spoke up. I think smiling suits him more. Mirko said, I think he's okay as he is. When he smiles like that, you know it's real and not a mask. Trust me, I've seen his fake smile. It's creepy how well he can do it, but he doesn't give off the warm aura a smile should give. Regardless, he was genuinely happy just now, which is a rare sight in itself. Aizawa explained. Eri smiled and felt happy that Midoriya was so nice even if he looked cold and menacing. I've changed my mind, Mina. I will become something in this world. Midoriya said to himself in a soft voice as he walked back to the dorms, so I guess I have to go talk to him of all people. Midoriya sighed with a chuckle. Chapter 22. Midoriya was in Aizawa's office to run something over with him. I have a request, Eraser. Midoriya said. And what is it? Aizawa said, not taking his eyes off his work. I want to add someone to this little circle of secrets we got. Midoriya explained, depends on who it is. Aizawa replied, All Might. Midoriya said. Eraser's ears perked up at the sound of that name. I'll talk to Nezu. Aizawa said, still typing away at this computer. Thanks. Midoriya said, taking his leave a few hours later. Alright, I'll do the explaining and then you can talk to him all you want. Aizawa said with a yawn. Midoriya stepped into the room with Aizawa and saw All Might sitting on the couch. Midoriya and Eraser. What a surprise. All Might said with a smile. All Might, I'm going to make this quick. Eraser explained, by all means go ahead. All Might replied. All Might then went on to explain the entire situation surrounding Midoriya and the Vigilante program. So your hope? All Might asked, just to make sure. Yes. Midoriya replied. So you were never quirkless? All Might asked, still somewhat confused. All for one forced these quirks onto me when I was with the League. I never had a quirk until then. Midoriya explained. I see. All Might said, frustrated that One for All did such a thing. Alright, well, I'm done here and try to refrain from speaking about this in public. All Might. Aizawa said as he stepped out. The atmosphere was a bit awkward for All Might, but he was excited to finally have a real talk with Midoriya. So how have you been here at U.A? All Might asked, trying to break the ice. It's better than prison, I'm sure. Midoriya replied dryly. Listen, what happened before is in the past. You couldn't have known me or what I went through. Midoriya said calmly. All Might sighed and nodded. But for you to go and say someone quirkless couldn't be a hero was shallow, especially if you were once quirkless as well. Midoriya said with cold eyes. I'm sorry. All Might replied with a bow. Hardly matters now. I'm just going to get right to the point. I need you to help me control these quirks. I have the basics down and I control its output to some degree, but I've noticed if I get pushed too far I lose control of the power. Midoriya explained while looking down on his right hand. I see, and since I'm the only teacher with prior experience to such a destructive quirk, you chose me. All Might replied. Seems like you get it. So shall we? Midoriya said as he stood up. Now. All Might asked. No one uses the gyms unless it's for class, so as long as there is no lesson planned on that day it should be empty. Midoriya explained. Well, alright then. All Might said, somewhat excited to see what Midoriya can do up close at Gamma Gym. How is Class 1B coming along, young Midoriya? All Might asked. Midoriya glanced at All Might, who had an excited smile on him like a child at a candy store. They are not as experienced or well-trained as 1A, but ever since I started teaching them I've seen some improvement. Midoriya replied as he led the way. There was a silence for a few minutes and Midoriya spoke. How do you feel now that you're not the top hero? Midoriya asked, breaking the ice this time. All Might turned around to look at Midoriya and smiled. Well, it was somewhat hard to grasp if I'm being honest. All Might replied. How so? Midoriya asked. Well, I have always been the savior. I never needed saving myself, you see. Midoriya, when you blocked that boulder in the gym for me, I realized that I have to rely on others now. All Might explained to Midoriya. I see. Well, Mirko is, in my opinion, a worthy successor. Midoriya said as they finally arrived at the gym. Midoriya was still in his work clothes, so he had to go change. Young Midoriya seems to have mellowed out a bit. All Might said to himself, recalling how cold Midoriya was back in the day. A few moments later. Alright, I'm ready. Midoriya said as he walked out of the changing room with the U.A gym clothes for the winter. All Might felt a wave of sadness for some reason, seeing what Midoriya could have been. A student of U.A with eyes set on heroism. Show me what you got. All Might said, throwing a fist in the air in excitement. I have 4 quirks. 2 kinetic quirks, strength enhancer, and air cannon. Midoriya explained to All Might, I don't know much about mixing quirks, but from the sounds of it and your display of power with your fight against Overhaul, it is dangerous. All Might said, placing his thumb underneath his chin. Okay. Show me each quirk separately in action, All Might said. Midoriya nodded and showed All Might his kinetic quirks first. So, these are my kinetic quirks, and alone they are in my opinion the weakest of the bunch, but still very dangerous. I can use one to increase my power and the other to negate the impact of anything coming towards me and channel the kinetic energy throughout my body and into the surface of which my body is standing on. Midoriya explained. Midoriya punched the concrete floor with his hand at full force, and made 3 feet hole that was the size of his fist. Are you okay? All Might asked, worried for Midoriya. Yeah, this is all for research anyway. I want to show everything there is to know about these quirks so we can understand them better. Midoriya said, lifting his bloodied hand. Just be careful, we don't want to attract any attention to you. All Might said, still worried. Midoriya went to the nearby water fountain and cleaned his hand. Okay, I'm going to need your help with this one, All Might. Midoriya said as he tossed a baseball at All Might. Oh. What do you want me to do? All Might asked. I need you to throw that at me as hard you can while in your battle form. I know you can't hold it for more than a few seconds, but try your best. Midoriya said, walking a few feet away. As hard as I can. Are you sure? All Might asked, worried they would make a scene. Yes, I'm sure. The building has reinforced glass and it's soundproof, so don't worry about that. As for me, I have done this before, so it's okay. Midoriya said, reassuring All Might. If you say so, young Midoriya. All Might said as he made his way to the end of the gym. Nothing as strong as him though. Midoriya chuckled to himself. Ready? All Might shouted. Yay. Midoriya replied, here I go. All Might said, changing into his battle form and throwing the ball as hard he could at Midoriya. Please don't die. Midoriya said to himself as he watched All Might wind up. The gym shook a tiny bit at the raw power at which the ball was thrown. All Might quickly returned to his normal form and was barely able to see the ball just before it struck Midoriya. The chance to experiment with this sort of power is exhilarating. Midoriya thought with a big smile. Midoriya caught the ball with his 2 hands and absorbed the kinetic energy of the ball and transferred it into the ground he was standing on. Midoriya felt his bones shake from the energy, but it wasn't painful. The ground beneath Midoriya cracked and the entire school shook vigorously for a few moments before stopping. Exciting. Midoriya thought as he fell on his bottom. Oh my. All Might said, why died that Midoriya caught the ball and even made everything around him shake at such force. Young Midoriya. Are you okay? All Might asked as he ran over to Midoriya. Now that was amazing. Midoriya said as he ran over to his bag and pulled out his notebook. Midoriya began to mumble to himself all the possible uses this experience just opened up to him. Alright, ready for the strength quirk? Midoriya said as he closed his notebook and set it down. Midoriya walked to the center of the gym. I'm ready, but a question, young Midoriya. All Might said loudly. Eh? Midoriya replied, looking over to All Might. I want you to punch the air as hard as you can. I want to see if you can create air pressure with your punch alone. All Might explained as he pulled up a chair and took a seat. Good idea, Midoriya said as he got ready. Midoriya punched the air as hard he could and the air pressure wasn't as strong as All Might's, but it wasn't something to underestimate either. Wow. All Might whispered, I think that says enough about that quirk. Let's move on to the last one, shall we? All Might said, if you say so. Midoriya said, this last quirk, air cannon, in my opinion, is the most dangerous one. It has so many uses and is very dangerous in itself, but combined with the other quirks it's honestly frightening. Midoriya explained to All Might, I remember fighting against All for 1 year ago and he used that exact same quirk. All Might said. Midoriya was surprised to hear that fact. Okay, here I go. Midoriya said. Midoriya made a gun with his hand and aimed it at a nearby medicine ball rack and shot at it. The rack flew and slammed against the nearby wall. This is one use I've found, but depending on the shape I make with my hand it can take many forms. I can also use it on my feet, but it's harder to control. Midoriya explained to All Might. I see, and mixing all these quirks together results in the power you used against Overhaul. All Might said as he made his way over to Midoriya. That's right. Midoriya replied, well, first things first. What do you feel when you go all out? All Might asked. It's like a numbing pain, but my skin feels like it's ripping apart, which hurts plenty. I'm thinking the other quirks are amplifying the air cannon and my body can't contain the power. Midoriya said, walking over to his notebook full of theories and notes on his quirks. Your body can handle the power, you're just not used to it yet. Imagine it like working out, you need to tear your muscles before they can get bigger. All Might said, flexing his weak arms. Maybe, but even if that was the case, what is the right way to train? Midoriya asked. Mix all your quirks and change all of the outputs from 100 to 1. I know it's a lot easier said than done, but it's the only way. All Might replied, no excuses here, I'll take your advice, All Might. Midoriya said as he wrote the tip into his notebook. Thank you for today, it has been eye-opening, Midoriya said, bowing respectfully. Not at all, young Midoriya, anytime. All Might said, bowing back for some reason. Let's call it a day. Midoriya said as he made his way to the changing room. Right, have a good afternoon, young Midoriya. All Might said as to you, All Might. Midoriya said, walking into the changing room. All Might was walking back to the dorms when he thought about Midoriya and his fearsome skill. Young Todoroki can barely switch between his two quirks, but Midoriya can switch to 4 and combine each one at will, while also being extremely dangerous without said quirks. He is not to be underestimated. All Might said to himself as he thought back on what Nighteye said. I see you standing on a mountain of corpses with blood on your hands. Please don't let that happen. All Might prayed under his breath at the U.A dorms. Midoriya made his way inside when he saw all the students surrounding Aizawa. U.A is in charge of her now. Mirko said to Midoriya, coming out of the crowd. Eerie? Midoriya asked. Yeah. Mirko said happily. Aizawa pulled Midoriya off to the side to talk to him. So what's the situation then? Midoriya asked with his arms crossed. I'll be keeping an eye on the girl. Her quirk, better yet her horn grew, so we're thinking her quirk has a lot to do with it. All parties agreed she would be in better care with me than in an orphanage. Aizawa explained to Midoriya along with the minor details. It seems it's for the best for now. Alright, I get the gist of the situation. Midoriya said, walking back to the group of teens. Oh, and we have some visitors later, so don't scare them off, yay? Aizawa said with a chuckle. Very funny. Midoriya replied, ah. He's not wrong though. Midoriya thought. Hi Deku. Eri said, waving hello. Midoriya walked up to Eri and knelt down. Hello Eri. So you got stuck with this guy, huh? Midoriya said jokingly, signaling over at Aizawa. He's not so bad. Eri said with a short giggle. Yeah, you're right. Midoriya said with a smile as he stood up. Alright, I know this is random, but can you third years take care of Eri? Aizawa asked the third years class 1A. Go to your rooms, we have visitors coming soon. Aizawa announced. Midoriya, don't be weird and change into something more homelike. Seeing you in a suit makes me suffocate. Aizawa said with an evil grin. You know I don't have any other clothes except work clothes, do you? You really are evil. Midoriya thought. Sure. Midoriya replied. Todoroki was the last to start going upstairs when he was stopped by Midoriya. Todoroki, can I bother you for a second? Midoriya asked. Sure, what can I do for you? Todoroki replied warmly. I'll see you downstairs then, Todoroki said as he closed Midoriya's door. This really doesn't suit me. Midoriya said with a sigh. 30 minutes later, Tokoyami sneezed loudly. Hey, are you okay? Did you catch a cold? Yoraraka asked, concerned. No, I'm healthy, my mucus was just acting up. Tokoyami replied. Now that he's famous, I'm sure he's being mentioned in conversations. Like Hieiazu. Kaminari said loudly. I doubt I have any fans. Tokoyami replied. Well, you did intern at Hawk's place. Yoraraka added. Todoroki, I don't think these are right for me. Midoriya said, coming downstairs with the rest of the students. Midoriya was wearing a warm turtleneck with sweatpants. The class turned to look at the Midoriya before them. Midoriya, I didn't know you wore these kinds of clothes. Mina said, walking up happily to Midoriya. I don't. Todoroki was kind enough to let me borrow these. I need to get more clothes, I suppose. Midoriya said, fixing the collar on his sweater. Well, I think they look great on you. Mina said, with a big smile. They look good, man. Kirishima said, you look like a model, dude. If I saw you like this for the first time I wouldn't think you were a badass fighter. Kaminari said, I think they look really good on you. Yoraraku said happily, it does suit you well. Yaorazu said, taking a sip of her tea. The class was all over Midoriya and his clothes when Ida spoke up. They are here, everyone. Ida announced. The door opened and 5 people came through the door, locking on with sparkling eyes. Mandalay said, here to lend a helping paw. Ragdoll added, coming out of nowhere. Tiger continued, stingingly cute and catty. Pixie Bob said loudly, we're the Wild Pussycats. The group said in unison. The class erupted at the sight of the group except for Midoriya, who knew who they were but couldn't care less to pay any real mind and ill. Hey, are you? Kota asked, walking up to Midoriya. Midoriya's eyes widened a little at the sight of Kota. You're the kid from the mountain. Midoriya replied, genuinely surprised. Deku? It really is you. Kota said loudly. Kota, do you know this person? Mandalay asked Kota, come to think of it, do I know you? I don't remember seeing you at the training camp. Mandalay added, I remember all my students. Tiger said, walking up to Midoriya, are you a new student in the class? Pixie Bob asked, this must mean you became a student at U.A. I knew it when you saved me from Muscular. You would be a student. There was no way they couldn't let you be one. Deku. Kota said loudly, wait, you're Deku? Aren't you part of the league? Mandalay asked. Tiger and the rest of the Pussycats were a bit on guard. Yeah, that's me, I'm Deku. My real name is Midoriya Izuku. It's nice to meet you all. Kota, I'm sorry but I'm not a student. Midoriya explained to the group, he's our teacher. Mina and Mineta said loudly. Midoriya explained briefly the situation to them all. I see, so that's how it is. Tiger said, Deku, I mean Midoriya, I'm grateful for what you did that day. Mandalay bowing to Midoriya, it's no problem. Midoriya replied. There was a pause and one of the students broke the silence. So what brings you to U.A? Sato asked. We came to celebrate Ragdoll's reinstatement. Pixie Bob replied. The class burst into excitement at the news. Didn't you have your quirk stolen? Midoriya asked, which surprised everyone. Not necessarily. I'll be supporting these 3 as the office lady. Call me the old cat. Ragdoll said happily. We got a report from Tartarus. Pixie Bob added, honestly it's a problem. I see a good quirk and I want it. There's some I want to return. But a quirk must be used sooner than later. All for one said, yeah, that sound like him. I remember when he came back with your quirk, he was ecstatic about it. Senile bastard, Midoriya added. He did? Mandalay said, interested. What did he say? Ragdoll asked. He just went on and on about how a good quirk like yours wasn't being put to good use or something like that. Later he asked me for a detailed examination of your quirk but I couldn't get around to it since I got arrested. Midoriya explained like it was nothing. Tiger said, frustrated. He treats quirks like a toy he can dispose of at any time, so it wasn't much of a surprise to me. Midoriya continued, I see. Mandalay said, somewhat sad. Midoriya didn't have any information on how to pull a quirk out of all for one. I'm sorry about your quirk. Midoriya said to Ragdoll, it's not so bad. Despite us being inactive this whole time we are still in the triple digits of the Billboard charts. Ragdoll said with high spirits, is that why you all rejoined? Yaorazu asked, we can't be happy with our rank now, we must climb higher. Ragdoll said happily, yes. The Japan Billboard chart will be broadcasted in a short while. Mandalay added. The charts without an All Might. I wonder how it will shake out. Midoriya thought Kota was silent up till now, but he wanted an answer for a question he had since he walked into the room and saw Midoriya. So are you going to be a hero? Kota asked loudly. Midoriya didn't reply, but his face more enough of an answer. If you become a hero I'll be your #1 fan. Kota said happily. Midoriya was sure he wanted to do something with his life aside from living in the shadows, but that comment made him want to become a hero even if it was just for a second. The room was quiet. Everyone knew Midoriya's and how adamant he was on not becoming a hero. Maybe I will. Midoriya said without even thinking. The room was caught off guard by that reply. No promises though, kid. Midoriya said with a smile. The room felt warm after that comment, and the TV began to announce the commencement of the Billboard results. Midoriya didn't care about the ranking, but the fact that Best Genius didn't show confirmed some suspicions he had. But what really caught his attention was something Midoriya didn't see coming. The rest of the people in the room seems very interested. However, hey, you guys scheming in the dark. Be ready to be pummeled by me. Mirko said, full of confidence. If this was based around approval rating, you have been third headshot. A reporter said with a smile. Numbers don't concern me. I believe fostering the peace is the essence of heroism. Edgeshot replied, who cares about any of that? Hawks said loudly. The crowd went silent. Midoriya got a bit interested now. Damn, that was ballsy. Mirko added, as usual, going to mess with everyone, aren't you? Edgeshot said, can't hold it in. Hawks said, flying up in the air as he snatched the mic from the reporter. Let's see if we are going by approval ratings. Best Genius would be first, I would be second, and in third would be Hope the Vigilante, fourth would be Best Genius, and fifth would be Endeavor the so-called first. Hawks explained to everyone present that Vigilante ain't even a hero. Mirko said, hiding her anger at the name. The crowd murmured in agreement to that statement. Everyone knew about Hope now, but he was more of a boogeyman for heroes. So? As far as I know, he took out Overhaul by himself and does other heroic things under the radar, knowing full well he won't be compensated for putting his life on the line like that. Plus, I heard he knocked you out cold, Mirko. Hawks said with a subtle smirk, I heard that if you get in the Vigilante's way, he will beat you down with no mercy. A hero whispered to another, what I'm trying to say is, we no longer have a symbol. Why are people who can't earn a higher rank than me being so tame on a day that should be considered a turning point? Please speak like real heroes. Hawks said as he began to flow down. Hawks was about to hand over the mic, but he thought of something fun to say. And one more thing. 1 million yen to the person who catches the Vigilante Hope. Now to the man with less approval ratings, Hawks said with a smile as he handed the mic over to Endeavor. The crowd erupted silently at the bounty. Mostly everyone was ecstatic, but some were hesitant. Did you even see the damage that guy did at the raid on the Yakuza? A hero asked another hero. Yeah, I heard he leveled an entire block by himself. The hero said, thinking about going against that sort of power apart from what the novice just tried to stir up. I only have one thing to say to everyone. Just watch me. Endeavor said with a confident smile, making things a bit more difficult, aren't we, Hawks? Midoriya thought as he watched the TV. The class was talking about the Billboard and Midoriya was alone in a corner watching over them when Mandalay came up to him. Can we talk? Mandalay asked nervously. Sure. Midoriya replied. Chapter 23. Midoriya and Mandalay were in an office room away from everyone else. So you wanted to speak to me? Midoriya asked as he set up a chair for Mandalay to sit on. Yes. Mandalay replied, sitting down. Midoriya sat across from Mandalay, expressionless as usual. I wanted to personally thank you for saving my nephew that time, in the forest. Mandalay said, standing up and bowing towards Midoriya. No need. Midoriya replied, politely signaling for her to sit. If you don't mind me asking, why did you do it? Mandalay asked. My ex-colleague Muscular was ordered to kill me, and the boy Kota was unfortunately at the wrong place at the wrong time. I also don't agree with the act of killing. Midoriya explained to Mandalay. I understand. Quite noble for an ex-villain. Mandalay said with a chuckle. Not noble. I simply had the morals others lacked. Midoriya replied softly. I am grateful regardless, Midoriya. I'm sure these students are in great hands. Mandalay said, getting up and giving Midoriya a kiss on the cheek. Midoriya didn't react to the kiss and looked at Mandalay. No reaction. Mandalay thought to herself, shall we? Midoriya said, opening the door to the hallway for Mandalay. A few days later in Gamut Gym. Rumors of Nomu are being spread, but how much is true? Midoriya asked himself as he did a couple stretches. Midoriya was alone in the Gamut Gym waiting for Shinso. Hello? Shinso called out quickly into the gym. Aizawa entered the gym right after Shinso. Yeah, I'm here. Midoriya replied, well, it's Midoriya's turn to train you today, so good luck. Aizawa said as he crawled into his sleeping bag. Are you ready? Midoriya asked Shinso. Yes. Shinso said, determined. Shinso was easily beaten by Midoriya, but the improvement was there. You've gotten better with that thing. Midoriya said, pointing at the scarf around Shinso's neck. Aizawa made sure I had the basics down by force. Shinso said, with a sigh, that's good, but it's no use if you can't make quick decisions in a fight. Midoriya explained to Shinso. Midoriya continued his training until Shinso couldn't move anymore. I'm tapping out. Shinso said, out of breath. Same here. Midoriya said as he tossed a bottle of water toward Shinso. Thanks. Shinso said, catching the bottle. You guys done already? How long was I out? Aizawa asked in a groggy voice. Well, it's like 1:34, so about 2 hours. Midoriya replied, I got paperwork to do. Aizawa sighed in frustration. Midoriya, I will see you soon. Shinso said with a smile, till next time Shinso, and make sure to train when you can. Midoriya said before Shinso could leave. Shinso simply nodded and left the gym. Shit. Aizawa said as he ran back toward the dorms. Suddenly, Midoriya knew that expression all too well, and he pulled out his phone to see Endeavor trending on the news. Endeavor is struggling against a Nomu which has suddenly appeared in Fukuoka. Midoriya didn't say anything and quickly ran outside towards the dorms. The newsman was on the scene of the battle. With the heroes occupied with saving civilians, it seems no one else is able to help Endeavor and Hawks at this critical moment. The newsman said into the mic the situation was looking dire, as Endeavor nor Hawks were able to deal any real damage to the Nomu. Midoriya quickly put on his suit and grappled his way out of the window and made his way to the city. The new costume Midoriya had asked for was more complicated than ever, since he had requested very specific details to be added this time around. The mask was now able to change his voice due to all the data he gave Aizawa and the support department. His gauntlets now had tubes which could store wind pressure and allowed Midoriya to store and release air pressure without shattering his gauntlets. Midoriya was looking down his new boots, which were now metal enforced, along with small breathable holes so he could use his air cannon without having to take off his boots. Midoriya was in a hurry, so he gambled and left in broad daylight, which could have let him be seen by anyone easily, but luck was on his side this day. 10 minutes later, Midoriya arrived on the scene and saw Hawks fighting some average Nomu on the ground. Shit, I won't reach him. Hawks thought as he saw a Nomu raise a fist over a civilian. Midoriya shot his gauntlets at the Nomu and stuck the grappling mechanism into its skin, causing the Nomu to direct its attention toward Midoriya. Run. Midoriya said to the civilian. The Nomu threw a punch which connected, but Midoriya used his kinetic quirk and absorbed the energy, reversing it back at the Nomu 2x the strength. I knew you would show up. Hawks said, flying over to Midoriya. Hawks, I don't appreciate what you did at the conference. Midoriya replied coldly, oh, don't be so cold. I'm like a fan, you know. Ah, but now isn't the time for this. Hawks said, switching his expression. You're right. So how's he holding up? Midoriya asked calmly. Not good. Endeavor has used many finisher moves which didn't even phase this Nomu. Hawks explained, I bet it's hot as hell up there. Midoriya said, looking up at Endeavor. Yeah, the moment I get too close I start suffocating. Hawks explained, wiping some sweat off his brow. The entire area felt a few degrees hotter already. As Midoriya and Hawks began to make their way towards Endeavor, a large beam of light lit up the sky. What was that? Hawks asked, flying alongside Midoriya, who was using his gauntlets more like where is Endeavor? Midoriya replied, looking up at the now empty sky. Listen, I'm going to get a better view. You go to his last known position. Hawks explained as he diverted from Midoriya. Midoriya soon arrived on the scene and saw Endeavor was on the ground, bleeding profusely from his face. Is there a stronger hero? The Nomu asked, looking around, and it seems the hero Endeavor is down. The helicopter reporter said, circling the area. The Nomu was frantically looking around like a madman until it felt a burst of heat against its side. Endeavor had gotten up and tried to attack the Nomu, but to no avail, and was thrown into a few buildings. At the rate things are going, things will turn out even worse than Mina. A news helicopter reporter said the Nomu scaled a building and searched until it saw civilians in the distance. Humans over there? The Nomu said, eyeing the people in the absence of a symbol. A reporter said into her mic as she was being pushed around, this is what happens when we don't have a symbol. A teenager shouted into the camera. The Nomu was about to pounce when it was sent flying back to the street with extreme force. Wind pressure and the shudder of the ground could be felt throughout the entire city. What was that? A civilian shouted. You can talk, Nomu. Midoriya said, hooked onto the side of the building. You're strong, aren't you? I can feel it. Mask said, turning to face Midoriya with a smile. Midoriya only took his eyes off the Nomu for a second to look at Endeavor when it was already in his face. F fast to the Nomu said, swinging his arm at Midoriya, but missed. Midoriya grappled onto another building, but the Nomu was already going towards the evacuation area. Shit. Midoriya said as he began to chase after the Nomu. Midoriya was swinging behind and using his air cannon to keep up when he realized Endeavor was on his tail too, jumping from building to building. We can't let him get away, Vigilante. Endeavor shouted. Can you keep up? Midoriya said, as he began to run alongside Endeavor. Don't underestimate me. Endeavor said angrily. Take a look over there. The flame is still burning. Endeavor is still fighting for our sake. So stop crying over a symbol that is no longer here and look at him. The boy shouted into the camera while pointing at the bright light in the distance. So you have regeneration too? The Nomu asked Endeavor, who was right behind him. Don't lump me in with you. I'm barely able to move at this moment. Endeavor thought as he chased after the Nomu. Midoriya noticed Endeavor began to radiate an ungodly amount of heat. This has to be it. Midoriya thought as he got behind Endeavor and placed his hand on the man's scorching back. I'm going to propel you towards him. Ready? Midoriya asked loudly. Do it. Endeavor shouted. Midoriya placed both his hands and pushed, followed with the force of his air cannon and his strength quirk, sending Endeavor flying. Hawks then appeared just in time and gave Endeavor an extra boost with his feathers. Endeavor punched the Nomu in the mouth and began to burn the Nomu from the inside as Hawks began to propel them upwards with his feathers. Hawks higher. Endeavor shouted. You're burning me feathers, I can't go any higher. Hawks shouted back. Midoriya didn't even think twice. He used air cannon to jump toward Endeavor, who was high up in the air. Don't die, Midoriya said as he was behind Endeavor. Midoriya used his quirks to propel Endeavor even higher into the air, but it was way too hot for any normal human without a pyrokinetic quirk to withstand that much heat. Shit, he passed out. Hawks said as he saw Midoriya falling down in a spiral. Hawks just barely caught Midoriya with what little wings he had left and set him down carefully. Midoriya coughed and caught his breath. Meanwhile, Endeavor was shouting at the top of his lungs that he brought down the modified Nomu from the sky. He's going to burn the Nomu faster than he regenerate. Midoriya thought as he watched the ball of fire descend so bright. Midoriya said as he watched Endeavor burn the Nomu. Catch him. Some nearby heroes said as they tried to catch Endeavor. Endeavor crashed to the ground, but to everyone's surprise Endeavor stood up, raising his right arm in the air. I almost bit the dust there. I'll have to ask for a respirator in the mask. Midoriya thought to himself. Hawks and Endeavor were having a conversation on the street and Midoriya was about to leave when he noticed a familiar face appear out of an alley. It's nice to meet you, I guess, Endeavor. Dabi said. Of all the times. Midoriya said as he watched from above. Midoriya watched as Dabi set up a wall of flames surrounding Endeavor and Hawks. So where is the other one? Hope. I wanted a few words with him. Dabi explained as he took a step closer towards Hawks and Endeavor. He left. Endeavor was about to say when he was interrupted. Can't afford to lose you both today. Midoriya said, stepping in front of them. And so you wanted to speak to me? Midoriya asked, using the voice changer. I did hope. You see, at the League we try to keep tabs on people of interest, but you don't exist. Dabi said, rubbing the back of his head. Hawks and Endeavor were actually intrigued. Now. Yes, see, people leave a trail, but for some reason no one has any info who you are or who you were, but I think I've figured it out. I know who you really are under that hood. Dabi said with a wicked smile. Careful what you say next. Midoriya replied in a cold voice. Don't worry, I could care less what you're doing now, and revealing you now would be such a waste, but know this, Hope. The more attention you attract, the harder it will be. Dabi explained. Midoriya did not respond and looked at Dabi, who was getting ready to attack. Now get out of the way. It's not every day the two top heroes are on death's doorstep. Dabi shouted as he dashed towards Midoriya. Midoriya was about to defend when Mirko came in from above and stomped the ground, causing a gust of wind to blow the wall of fire away. "You're one of them League of Villains bastards, aren't ya?" Mirko said with a smile. "Damn well, another day I guess. Yujiko, get me out of here." Dabi said with a sigh. "Catch you later, number one. I'm sure we will have more time to talk later, but for now don't go kicking the damn bucket." Dabi shouted with a crazed smile. Dabi soon was full of slime and disappeared into thin air. Mirko tried to kick, dab it, but only kicked the goop. "Ah, this stuff stinks," Mirko said with a gag. Midoriya was about to take his leave when Mirko blocked his path. We have to settle things," Mirko said angrily. "Not now," Midoriya said, trying to get around her. "Then come quietly and make this easy for me," Mirko said. "Mirko, let him be for today." Endeavor shouted. "We beat that thing because of him." "Hawks," explained to the woman. "Tch, I guess," Mirko said, stepping out of the way. Midoriya quickly left the scene by using his gauntlets and made his way back to UA a few days later. Midoriya was typing away when he heard incoherent whispers. "What is?" Midoriya thought to himself when the whisper suddenly stopped. "I must be tired." Midoriya yawned as he looked at the clock. 12 a.m. Midoriya was laying in bed when he felt cold all of a sudden. "I can't see anything," Midoriya thought as he looked around the dark abyss surrounding him. Midoriya looked down at his body and saw that he only had his hands but no lower body. "Wonderful. You have mastered the power already," the tall man in the suit said. "Who is that? Why am I here?" Midoriya thought as he moved closer to the figure. Midoriya was approaching slowly when he realized he was standing behind the man with the suit. "You can't do this. It isn't humane," the skinny man on the ground said. Midoriya was standing next to the man in the suit. "This is my younger brother. A fool plagued with this so-called justice, but you see this plague has spread over time since my younger brother's time and heroes were born," the tall man said, pointing ahead. Midoriya looked over and saw a line of 9 people along with All Might, the skinny boy, a woman and Mirko. "I've been a one-man army for all this time, but I realized that my body could not hold on for much longer, so I chose Shigaraki as my successor," the tall man said. "It's unfortunate you didn't come along sooner. You would have made a perfect successor," the tall man explained. Midoriya tried to speak but he wasn't able to. "Yes. I am all for one." "All for one," said with a twisted smile. "We will talk again soon, Midoriya, but I am disappointed with you. Returning back to the people who cast you away, like a dog, but don't worry, I have some nice plans for you," All for one said with a smile before disappearing. Midoriya woke up in a cold sweat and he looked at his shaking hands. "So those were the previous holders of One for All," Midoriya whispered to himself as he caught his breath. The cold air from the window came through and Midoriya lay down and went back to sleep. "Ring ring, yay?" Midoriya said, picking up his phone in a groggy voice. "Rare for you not to be up early. Today is a big day, so get dressed and not in work clothes," Aizawa said, hanging up the phone. "What is this guy on? There was nothing in the schedule that was given to me," Midoriya thought as he got up. Midoriya changed into the U.A winter gym clothes and put on a sweater over his clothes and soon got a message from Aizawa of the location he was supposed to be at. At the training grounds, Midoriya saw the students of Class 1A and Class 1B having a friendly argument. "Sorry I'm late," Midoriya said, walking up to Aizawa. "Midoriya, do you like my winter costume?" Mina asked cheerfully. "It looks great, Mina." Midoriya replied, "Yeah, we all got some huge wardrobe changes," Kaminari said, showing off his clothes. "Hopefully you don't freeze out there, Katsuki." Midoriya said, "Shut up, Deku. Just wait till I get another chance to get my hands on you," Bakugo shouted angrily. "Yeah. Midoriya said, looking down at his clipboard. Midoriya walked over to Class 1B to see how they were doing. "How are you all feeling today?" Midoriya asked, walking up to the class. "I feel like we will be able to," Kendo was saying before she was interrupted. "Today we will show our superiority to Class 1A," Monoma shouted. "That's the spirit, but tone it down a bit," Midoriya said. "I hope you all can implement what I have taught you on this day. Class 1A didn't get special treatment from me, so it's up to you how well you perform today." Midoriya explained to the class. We will do our best. Kendo said on behalf of the class. Alright, settle down everyone. Vlad announced we have a special guest today and he's trying to transfer to the hero department. Aizawa explained. Midoriya's ears perked up a bit at the sound of that and he felt a small wave of excitement. Shinso Hitoshi from the general department. Aizawa said, introducing Shinso. Both classes erupted and began to greet Shinso when Aizawa spoke up again. And one more person will be joining you all today. Aizawa said with a small grin. Is there someone else? Midoriya thought as he made a small stretch. You're very heartwarming, teacher, Midoriya. Aizawa announced, signaling over to Midoriya. Both classes got nervous and whispered amongst themselves. Whoa, Midoriya is joining us today? Kirishima asked his classmates. Payback time. Kamakiri said with a smile. Alright, you two introduce yourselves. Aizawa said, letting Midoriya and Shinso take the front. But they all know me. Midoriya was saying before Aizawa slapped him in the back of the head. My name is Shinso Hitoshi and to be honest I've met some of you in the sport festival but don't think we are going to be pals. I've been left behind by you all and I'm desperate for this, so in my eyes you're just stepping stones in my quest to become a hero who can help others. Shinso said with cold eyes. The class was taken aback by those words. Well said. Midoriya thought, proud of his pupil. Now you. Aizawa said, looking over at Midoriya. My name is Midoriya Izuku and I will be taking part in this training exercise. Midoriya said, introducing himself. The class didn't know how to react since they already knew him, but it was oddly refreshing. The teachers explained the rules and the way the exercise was going to pan out. Sensei, I don't want to be rude, but isn't it unfair to the team who goes against Midoriya? Kaminari said. I'm glad you brought that up, Kaminari. Aizawa said, pulling out a suitcase. Midoriya, can you please come here for a second? Aizawa asked Midoriya. In an instant Midoriya heard a click and his wrist felt heavy. I see. Midoriya said, raising his hands. Midoriya will be wearing high-density weights as to even the playing field for the teams. Aizawa explained, showing the weights to the class. Aizawa finished placing the weights onto Midoriya's ankles and continued. Shinso, please come and pick a team out of the box. Vlad said as he approached with 2 boxes, 1 and 5. Shinso said, handing the lots to Aizawa. So you will be with Class A in the first bout and Class B in the second. Aizawa said to Shinso, Midoriya, you will be in the team that is against Shinso as to even out the numbers. Vlad said, directing Midoriya's attention to the Class B team. He would be on the Class A team. Went as followed: Sasui, Ijiru Kirishima, Denki Kaminari, Koji Koda, and Shinso Hitoshi. As for Class B, Ibara Shiozaki, Jiroda Shishida, Huririn, Midoriya Izuku, and Kozai Tsuburaba. For Group 5 the roster for both classes was Class Bento Monoma, Uekodai, Reiko Yanagi, Nirenjinki, Shoda, and Shinso Hitoshi. Class Okako Uraraka, Mina Ashido, Minoru Mineta, Sasui, and Midoriya Izuku. You're on our team. Mina said cheerfully to Midoriya. Let's do our best, Deku. Uraraka said with enthusiasm. I'm glad we can train together like this, Midoriya. Asui said with a smile. Let's do our best. Midoriya replied to the girls. Hey, how come you're so popular? What's your secret? Mineta asked Midoriya. Focus. Midoriya scorned his student who had his mind in the gutter. Midoriya was going to go talk to his other paired teams when Shinso approached him. I don't plan on losing today, Midoriya. Actually, scratch that, I can't lose today. Shinso said, full of determination. You're going to talk to the person who trained you like that? Midoriya said with a smile. Midoriya trained Shinso along with Aizawa. Sero asked Tenya. It would seem. Tenya replied, looking over at Midoriya and Shinso. It won't go like in training. Now I can use my quirk. Shinso said, stepping up to Midoriya. Midoriya was getting a bit excited to see how someone trained under Eraserhead and himself would fare against both classes. With these things on me you might stand a chance. Shinso, show me everything you have learned. Midoriya said, standing up to Shinso. Group 1, get ready. Aizawa announced. Midoriya met up with his group and let the team take charge. If they are to learn today, they must take charge. Midoriya thought to himself as he followed his group and got ready to fight. Hey Midoriya, I know how handy you can be with one of these. Aizawa said as he handed Midoriya an sharpened blade. Why give me this? It's not even sharpened. Midoriya sighed with a chuckle. Well, I can't really give a villain a knife, can I? That's all you're getting for a weapon, so think of something. Aizawa said with a laugh as he walked back to the group of teachers. Midoriya is participating? All Might asked Aizawa. All Might and Midnight had just arrived not too long ago. Who's here to balance out the teams against Shinso? Aizawa explained. Isn't he rather trained, however? Midnight asked, looking at the screen which had Midoriya in view. He has weights on him to even things out. Aizawa said, pointing at Midoriya's ankles and wrists. So what's the plan? Tsuburaba asked. I'll go in and thrash them up with you as backup. Shishida said, perhaps if we lured them in would be more effective. Shiozaki added, what do you think, Midoriya? You're being awfully more quiet than usual. Rin said, turning to look at Midoriya. This is training for all of you, so please think of me as a chess piece and tell me what to do. Midoriya replied as he followed the group. I believe he should stay with me as cover. Shiozaki said quickly, if he came with me we could wipe out the other group at once. Shishida replied, let's just agree on one plan please. Rin suggested to his classmates. So who will win? Midnight asked. All Might. I would like to say Class B since they have young Midoriya, but something tells me he won't take control of the group, so it is hard to say. All Might replied, knowing Midoriya he play the pawn throughout the day in this test. They won't learn anything if he became the leader. Aizawa added, looking at the big screen showing the training grounds. I agree, it would be foolish of him to take control of the group and lead them to victory, as they wouldn't learn anything. Vlad said, nodding his head in agreement. Midoriya got his orders and got ready to fight. Let's do this, guys. Tsuburaba said to his team. Start. Aizawa said over the intercom. Whisper, whisper. Midoriya shut his eyes in pain and shook his head slightly. Chapter 24. Midoriya was standing in front of the entire Class 1A group by himself. Don't look down on his, Midoriya, you can't get us all. Kirishima said. Shinso was in the back trying to figure out the best course of action, just like Midoriya taught him. Why isn't he moving? Kaminari asked the group. Midoriya shifted his eyes and looked over at Asui, who was crawling on a nearby wall. To my left and right, Midoriya said, and to his earpiece Shishida appeared out of nowhere and slammed Kirishima into some nearby pipes and flung Asui back into the group. Good distraction, Midoriya. Shishida said. Tsuburaba was riding on Shishida's back to provide support in the fight. Let's get them, Shishida. Tsuburaba shouted. Let's do it. Shishida replied. Shishida went silent and began to stand silently in the middle of the battle. Midoriya smiled and looked over at his student. Good work, man. Kaminari shouted. Shinso tweaked his mask and looked over at Midoriya. The mask I had been wearing after all this time was finally put to good use. Eraser told me the name of the mask would be changed when it was complete, but it seems they kept the name of the mask. Midoriya thought as he looked at Shinso. Artificial vocal cords, persona code. Shinso said as he tweaked his voice back to normal. The mask had gone through some changes visually, but internally it was all the same as the one Midoriya used with his costume. Shinso dashed and prepared his binding cloth to take out Tsuburaba. Too slow, Tsuburaba was about to say when he was pulled to the ground by Shinso. I'm not that slow. Shinso replied as he captured the boy in one swift motion. Asui. Shinso shouted as he used his cloth to toss Tsuburaba to her. Shishida was still brainwashed until Midoriya came over and punched him. Huh? What happened? Where is Tsuburaba? Shishida asked. Over there. Midoriya replied as he pointed at Asui running away with him. Get on. Shishida shouted. Midoriya didn't say anything and followed his lead. We're going after him. Shishida said as he began to chase Asui. No, you don't. Kaminari shouted as he stood in Shishida's path. Shishida swung at Kaminari, not caring about his electricity. Midoriya looked down at Shishida and jumped high into the air. You're wide open. Shinso said as he shot his scarf towards Midoriya, who was in midair. Midoriya saw the cloth coming towards him and caught it just before it wrapped around him. Shinso pulled the scarf back before Midoriya could get a good grip. If he had tightened his grip, I would have been captured. Shinso thought as he retreated back into the group. Shishida had slammed Kaminari into some nearby pipes and was electrocuted, but he was able to Shake it off and keep up the pursuit. Midoriya landed on some nearby pipes and watched Shishida face off against the group. He's fighting on his own and hasn't given me anything to do yet. Midoriya sighed as he watched Shishida fight his way towards Asui. She's long gone already, so just take out one or two now and let's retreat. Midoriya thought as he watched Kirishima and Kota go up against Shishida. You are the one who gives me the most trouble, Shishida said as he grabbed Kirishima and launched him towards Shiozaki. And you're coming with me, Shishida said as he grabbed Kota by his mask and began to retreat. Midoriya quickly retreated with Shishida back to the rest of the group. Where's Midoriya? Chisada said worriedly. I'm here, Midoriya replied as he caught up to Shishida. Shishida let out a sigh of relief and went back to the group. Midoriya was sitting around waiting for his next order while his group argued amongst themselves again. You used me as a diversion for your sneak attack. What a sin, Shiozaki said. But it worked, didn't it? Shishida replied. We lost Tsuburaba though, Rin said with a sigh. Yeah, but wait, something's coming over here, Shishida said, interrupting himself. It's 3 Asuis, Shishida explained to his team. HMPH, I won't fall for such a plot, Shiozaki said as she extended her vines. Midoriya guard a cell, Shishida said. Midoriya give me support, Shiozaki said. Shishida and Shiozaki looked at each other, but before they could say anything Rin spoke up. How about you help me with defense and let's leave it at that, Rin said with authority. Roger that, Midoriya replied as he pulled out his practice blade. A few moments later. I have captured one, Shiozaki said as she began to pull back her vines. We better be careful if it's Kaminari, Rin said as he began to retreat. You guys pulled the wrong card, Kaminari said as he appeared out of the shadows bound in vines. Shiozaki quickly encased him in vines so he couldn't use his electricity. Keep going and respread the vines, Shinso said in Rin's voice. Okay, Shiozaki said. Before she was brainwashed, Shiozaki was now under Shinso's control. Shishida, can you get the location of the enemy? Rin asked. Shishida was already going towards Shinso, but he didn't reply and simply pointed in a general direction. This is already a mess, Midoriya said as he looked around at the collapsing team. I'll wake up Shiozaki for now, Rin said as he shot scales at Shiozaki. Asui appeared out of nowhere and picked up Shiozaki off the ground. Your scales can't reach me from there, Asui said as she dropped off Shiozaki away from her team. Shishida, forget about Shinso, for now, focus on Asui, Rin shouted, but the team's communication was already in shambles. Rin turned back at Asui and watched as she was about to drop kick him when Midoriya stepped in and took the blow. Midoriya was sent flying off by the sheer force of the kick and felt something in his left arm crack a bit. Ow, Midoriya said, getting up and looking at his swollen arm. Since Asui was aiming for Rin and his tough scales, she wasn't holding back her kick. Midoriya should be out of the fight for now, Asui said to her team. Shishida was clawing his way towards Shinso when he heard Rin's voice. Dodge now, Rin shouted at Shishida. That won't work on me again, Shishida was about to say before he was knocked out by Rin hitting the back of his head. It was over, but Midoriya was no longer awaiting orders, so he was set loose and do as he pleased. Where is Midoriya? Asui asked her team. As long as we get those guys back to the cell we will win, Kaminari said. Speaking of which, why wasn't Midoriya doing more? Asui asked Rin. We didn't give him any specific orders, just vague ones. He did everything to the letter, but everyone had a different plan, Rin explained to Asui. Frustrated, Midoriya was watching from above and unsheathed his weapon. Even if Midoriya is stronger than them, the weights are going to stop him from taking this 3-on-1 inch, Aizawa said. It seems he doesn't care, Midnight added in a nutty tone. Midoriya jumped down in front of the group just a few feet before they could lock up his team. I knew you wouldn't stand around, Shinso said as he ran towards the cell dragging the other 2 students. Midoriya tried to stop Shinso, but Asui quickly got in front of him. How's your arm, Midoriya? Asui asked as she tried to use her tongue to grab Midoriya. It's fine, don't worry, Midoriya said as he got a hold of her tongue and pulled Asui toward himself. Midoriya kicked Asui in the stomach, which sent her flying backward, but she quickly got back up. The gauntlets really do hinder his ability. Without the gauntlets, I'd be on the ground, Asui thought as she caught her breath. Shinso placed the Shishida and Shiozaki into the jail and went back to help his team. Rin was still tied up but a piece of Shinso's binding cloth. "Here I come, sensei," Kaminari said as he shot his gadget on Midoriya. Midoriya threw his knife at the gadget and ricocheted it somewhere else. Kaminari quickly shot another item and Midoriya tried to dodge the metal disc, but Kaminari had predicted where he would be and it latched onto Midoriya. "Well done," Midoriya thought with a smile as he dashed towards Kaminari, only to be stopped by Shinso, who wrapped him up in the binding cloth. "Do it, Kaminari," Shinso shouted. "Right," Kaminari said, shooting a volt of electricity to Midoriya. Midoriya couldn't move and took the full attack head-on. "I think you guys got him," Asui said as she began to walk over to Midoriya. Midoriya was on his knees, when suddenly he broke free of the cloth and shot towards Kaminari. "Mental state, vigilance, you still got my item on you," Kaminari said as he shot electricity, but instead of being directed at Midoriya it was sent towards Shinso. UGH. Shinso grunted as he was shocked. Midoriya had stuck the item on Shinso the instant he had broken from the binding cloth. "I can do this," Shinso grunted as he got up from the ground. "Shinso!" Asui shouted, looking over at Shinso. Asui and Shinso nodded and without uttering a word had come up with a plan. Midoriya swung but just barely missed Kaminari. "If those gauntlets weren't there I would have been hurt bad." "Time to counter," Kaminari said to himself and shoved Midoriya back while applying some electricity. Midoriya was stunned by the volts and stood still for half a second, but that was more than enough. "Now Asui," Shinso shouted as he bound Midoriya quickly. "Sorry Midoriya, but we can't lose here," Asui said as she kicked Midoriya square inches the jaw. Asui, Kaminari, and Shinso caught their breaths as they stood over Midoriya, who finally fell to the ground. "I can't believe we got him," Kaminari said. "Let's put him in the jail along with the others," Shinso said. Rin and Midoriya were put into the jail and the exercise ended. It's a victory for Class A team with Shinso. "Even with those things on he's still a monster," Aizawa said with a chuckle. "Yes, young Midoriya is amazing even without a quirk." All Might added. Both classes were speechless. Midoriya had lost, but even more so that he almost won 3-1 with the weights on. "Well done you, 3. Midoriya said to the winning team. "I can't believe you're still conscious after that kick," Shinso said with a smile. "Yeah, my vision's a bit blurry but it's not too bad," Midoriya replied, looking over at Asui, who was visibly worried. "You should still go to the nurse." "I'll go with you," Asui said, opening up the jail and offering to help Midoriya up. Midoriya tried to get up himself but he was still dizzy from the kick and nearly fell to the ground. "Yeah, okay," Midoriya said, giving in, and let Asui guide him to the nurse. Midoriya was dropped off at the nurse by Asui and the teams began to talk about their mistakes. "Midoriya gave you all a good example of what happens when you don't give proper orders to someone you haven't fought alongside with," Vlad said to both classes. "As you all probably noticed, Midoriya didn't take the role as leader because he wanted the team to make their own decisions and strategies." Vlad continued, "Had Midoriya taken the role of leader he would have given his team a free win and I'm sure he wouldn't have lost a single ally, but you learn from your mistakes," Aizawa explained to the class. "Well said," Midoriya said with a yawn. "Are you okay, Midoriya?" Asui asked, walking up to Midoriya. "I'm fine, Asui," Midoriya replied, reassuring her. Midoriya took a seat on a nearby chair and waited for the medical bots to arrive. Shinso was the center of attention because he had been trained by Midoriya and Aizawa in the medical tent. The class was going well with both classes learning valuable lessons in battle, but something was happening to Midoriya while he was resting. "Can you hear them?" a voice whispered. A child's laughter could be heard faintly in the distance. Midoriya shot up and looked all around. "I swear I heard something," Midoriya thought to himself as he checked one more time. "Look, mommy, a flower," a girl said faintly. Midoriya looked around frantically again to see where that was coming from. He wasn't able to understand everything, but he could tell it was a child. "Midoriya, we're up," Mina said, walking into the tent and catching Midoriya's attention. "Oh, I'm sorry," Midoriya said, turning to face the group. "Are you okay? You seem a bit confused." Araka asked. "I'm okay," Midoriya replied calmly. "We came up with this awesome plan," Mineta said enthusiastically at Tartarus. You can hear them too, can't you, Midoriya? My little brother and everyone else. All for one said with a wicked grin back at the training field. So you're going to drag their attention and find out where they're all hiding, Midoriya Mina said with a smile. So I'm the bait. Midoriya said yes, but try not to get caught. Your Araka giggles alright. Midoriya replied, my quirk will act as a web to surround us. Mineta explained, showing his rope start. Midoriya separated and moved deeper into the field on his own. Where could they be? Midoriya thought as he traversed the training grounds. Over here, sweetie. A woman whispered to his left. Midoriya shot his head in the direction of the voice and was able to see Monoma through a pipe with infrared sight. What is? Midoriya asked, freaking out a little. He could see everything in infrared now. This isn't a quirk I have. What's happening? Midoriya asked himself. I like your eyes, boy. A voice whispered. Midoriya in an instant lost his infrared vision and returned back to normal. I suppose you found me, Monoma said as he appeared from behind the large metal pipe. Midoriya was still in a bit of shock after what just happened, and Monoma most likely copied Shinso's quirk, so he stayed quiet. I respect you, Midoriya. Being this strong without quirks is amazing. You know, people who are born with the perfect quirk have life handed to them, Monoma said as he pulled out something from his pockets in the distance. Your Araka could be heard shouting, but Midoriya simply ignored it. You don't even turn to look at your team. What a cruel teacher, Monoma said with a sigh. Shinso and I agree that those blessed with the perfect quirk will fall the hardest. I mean, Class A is a bit pathetic, Monoma was about to say when Midoriya dashed towards him. Monoma pulled out some screws and bolts and tossed them at Midoriya, making them bigger in an instant. Midoriya was slammed back by a massive screw and fell to the ground. Everyone watching grew silent as they watched the fight. Listen to this track while you read this next bit if you want. Smile. Yanaka ni kikuta kawaii, it isn't real, Midoriya whispered to himself as he placed both hands on his head. Unfortunately he doesn't have a quirk, ma'am, the doctor explained. I'm so sorry, Izuku, Inko said with tears. It's not your fault, Midoriya said with tears in his eyes. Do you want strength? Stain whispered in a cold voice. Did I make the right choice? Midoriya asked himself. They all deserve to die for how they treated you, Midoriya said to himself in a scratchy voice. It isn't their fault, don't drag them into this, Midoriya pleaded. Oh, sewer. The moment they realized you were stronger than them without a quirk, all of a sudden you're so well respected. But what if you were still weak, huh? Would they still respect you? Midoriya asked angrily. Mommy, come here, look at this, a little girl said full of joy. Who are you? Midoriya asked. I hate you, a male teenager shouted. Why? Why me? What did I do? Midoriya asked with tears in his eyes. It isn't fair. None of this is. A man shouted. What? What is? Midoriya asked desperately. A group of children whispered into Midoriya's ear along with the screams from men, women, and children. Why? Why are you screaming? Ugh! Midoriya screamed. Please. Please don't take it. Ragdoll begged with tears in her eyes. It's not up to you anymore, Midoriya and All for One said in unison. Back at the viewing station everyone watched as Midoriya writhed in pain on the ground. Something is wrong, Aizawa said as he dropped the tablet. What's this? Monoma asked as he watched Midoriya sit up and look towards him. Midoriya looked different from usual. His whole demeanor was blank, almost like a puppet. This is my chance, Monoma said as he got ready to attack. Midoriya flew towards Monoma at super speed almost like a blur and was about to punch Monoma, but Midoriya barely held back. Something is wrong. Go away, Midoriya muttered. Monoma's face was a mixture of fear and confusion as to what was happening. Shinso, Monoma shouted. Shinso, run away. I can't control, Midoriya said as his right eye twitched subtly. Midoriya was holding back the quirks from exploding, but it was taking everything out of him to do so. The whispers, I can hear them all, Midoriya said. Mommy, look how fast I can go, a boy whispered. Midoriya felt the power flow through him and he dashed into some nearby metal pipes, breaking them all down. Everyone turned to see what caused such a large amount of damage. What was that? Uraraka shouted as she dodged attacks from the other team. Midoriya couldn't control all the quirks flowing through him. He was a time bomb waiting to explode. Stop! Midoriya shouted at himself. Uraraka watched as Midoriya was unable to control his super speed and crashed into nearby pipes. He isn't doing this himself. Uraraka whispered. Stop, I don't know what you're saying. Midoriya thought as he fell to his knees. Uraraka held onto Midoriya from the back and held him down. Stop it. You're going to get hurt or worse. Midoriya said in pain. Don't worry, I have a plan. Uraraka assured Midoriya. Shinso was still watching, cautiously when Uraraka called out to him. Shinso, use your quirk on Midoriya. Uraraka shouted. Shinso nodded and thought up something to say. Midoriya, I want to show you what I learned. Shinso said with a smile. Yeah. Midoriya replied. Midoriya went silent and finally calmed down after the brainwashing. The voices of everyone who had their quirks stolen. A young skinny man said Midoriya was back in the Black Void, but this time instead of All for One it was the original holder of One for All. When my brother steals a quirk, a bit of them comes along with the quirk, and when he gives someone a quirk, a part of my brother goes with it. The skinny man explained. The whispers and quirks are like a switch button. All this is the result of All for One. The man continued. Midoriya's eyes widened and he understood what this meant. That's right. You now have access to All for One and all its quirks, even if it's for a limited amount of time. The quirks he gave you long ago implanted something like a command in your head laying idle, and now he flipped the switch, but as a result, he can't turn it off. The man explained. Your time limit to use All for One is fading, so that means I'll be gone soon. Control this power and prove my brother wrong, but for now, try and make peace with them, the man said as he pointed behind Midoriya. Midoriya turned around and witnessed the largest crowd of people he had ever seen. No faces, just dark figures. I can only make out their age and gender. Midoriya thought to himself as he stared into the crowd. I will help you also, please wait, but for now I beg you don't whisper to me all at once. Midoriya wanted to explain but wasn't able to. Even though Midoriya couldn't speak, the crowd seems to understand him. Good luck. The crowd whispered in unison. Midoriya shot up and caught his breath. Are you okay, Deku? Uraraka asked. Yay, I'm okay. Midoriya replied. So you do have a quirk? Acting like you were quirkless. Nomu shouted as he tried to touch Midoriya. Midoriya did not necessarily have All for One, but he did have his strength and air cannon quirks, so if Nomu used it he would rip his arms off in the process. Get down, Midoriya said as he fell on top of Uraraka. Nomu tried to follow up on his attack, but the battle from the rest of the team had broken out near them, causing him to back off. Shinso saw his chance and quickly threw his capture cloth at Midoriya and Shinso, but Midoriya caught it in midair. Alright, let's see the fruit of your training, Midoriya said as he turned to face Shinso, who had a smile on his face. Aizawa, Vlad, and All Might were watching nearby. Should I stop it? Vlad asked, getting ready to call it off. What do you think, Eraser? All Might asked, looking over to his left. Let it continue, Aizawa said, keeping his eye on Midoriya. Are you sure? Midoriya is supposed to be quirkless. Vlad said. Maybe it's manifested somehow. Aizawa lied. I've heard of such things before as well. All Might followed up as he looked over at Aizawa. Besides, Shinso has been wanting to fight Midoriya on a real field since we started training. Aizawa explained to Vlad. I can't believe you have such a soft spot for an ex-villain. Vlad chuckled. I don't believe it either. Aizawa sighed as he scratched the back of his head. Midoriya began to chase Shinso down while the others fought. I thought you were quirkless, Shinso said, catching his breath. Yeah, me too, Midoriya replied with a laugh. So you can laugh, Shinso said, getting his cloth ready. Show me everything you've learned, Shinso, Midoriya said as he approached slowly. Shinso threw his cloth at Midoriya's feet and missed when Midoriya jumped in the air, but that was what he wanted. Midoriya smiled as he realized he fell into Shinso's bait and took a punch right in the gut. You're not going easy on me, right? Shinso asked. Yeah, right, Midoriya replied with a cough. Mental state: Vigilance X slaughter. Midoriya's pupils shrunk and dashed towards Shinso, breaking the weak ground beneath his feet slightly. Shinso dodged Midoriya's kick by a hair and counterattacked, but Midoriya was too fast even with the weights. You have improved, no doubt, Midoriya said as he looked over at Shinso. Shinso wanted to prove his skill to Midoriya, so he held back on using his quirk, and Midoriya was too invested in the fight to care about Shinso's quirk. Here I come, Shinso said as he shot his cloth to a nearby pipe and brought it crashing down. Midoriya jumped out of the way, but Shinso's leg was already near Midoriya's face. Not so fast, Shinso, Midoriya said as he grabbed Shinso's leg before it reached him. Midoriya was still in his mental state, so his power and reaction speed were still enhanced, but it would fade soon. I'm not done yet, Shinso shouted as he shot his cloth at point-blank range at Midoriya. Shinso was certain this was it, but to his surprise Midoriya caught the cloth. You've improved, Midoriya thought as he pulled Shinso towards him. Midoriya pinned down Shinso and tied him up with the binding cloth so he could take him to jail. A few minutes later, Midoriya was pulled off to the side in secret by Aizawa. What was that all about there, huh? Aizawa asked, somewhat annoyed. I'll explain everything later, so find an excuse and let me sneak my way out of here. Midoriya said. Okay, let's talk later. My way out of here. Midoriya said. Okay, let's talk later, make your way out, Aizawa said, returning to the class. Midoriya was walking back to his room when he heard a voice. You did well. A few voices whispered in unison. Thank you, Midoriya replied as he looked up into the sky. Elsewhere, a newswoman was interviewing a citizen. So what did you see? She asked. I only saw his mask, just barely. All I know is that he was fast and took down that villain in a flash, but his mask was a V-shape and I heard he left a note with his name. The man explained. Do you remember the name? The woman asked. I overheard the cops say something I don't know, the man replied.